Chapter 24. Little comrade Shun, don't cry. Guanshan immediately sat up from the bed and walked over to Shun Dinghua's face, trying to wipe away her tears. Shun Dinghua's eyes were hazy with tears. She looked like a heavenly soldier who had been summoned and was about to beat drums and gongs to subdue the demon. Guanshan, the demon, was instantly a loss when faced with the aggressive attack of tears. Naturally, he could only wait to be captured. Shun Dinghua pursed her lips, and tears welled up in her eyes. She sniffled and did not cry. She did not say anything and just looked at Guanshan with a wronged expression. Guanshan would rather be surrounded by 3 drivers than be looked at by Shun Dinghua like this. He thought of many reasons. As a reporter, he had countless words to cover up his failure to keep the appointment. After all, this was not his fault from the beginning. But in the end, Guanshan could only say in a low voice, sorry. Shun Dinghua shook her head and reached out to hold Guanshan's bandaged hand. She gently rolled up the sleeve of his hospital gown. The exposed arm was wrapped in gauze and bandages. The original thin and strong outline could no longer be seen. Shun Dinghua's slender and fair fingers stroked the arm. She looked at Guanshan with her misty eyes and asked softly, "Does it hurt?" Guanshan felt that if he said that it hurt, she would definitely cry. He opened the interface view and looked at his health bar that was missing a bit. Moreover, it did not hurt much in the first place. Injuries sustained in the simulation would not hurt, but if they were retained outside of the simulation, they would still feel the same. After all, the simulator had reminded him to be careful of personal safety from the beginning. This was probably one of the reasons. If it were not for the fact that he wanted to make his words more credible, Guanshan would not have retained these wounds. He would have used flesh entanglement parasite to recover his health. And for some reason, Guanshan didn't feel much pain even though the injury was quite serious. It was probably because his level was higher, so he was more resistant to beatings. Guanshan thought for a moment and said seriously, "It doesn't hurt." He pointed at the shallow scar on the back of his hand. "Look, it's just some abrasions." The doctor wrapped it up a little exaggeratedly. "It's not a big deal." Shun Dinghua reached out and poked him carefully. "Really?" Guanshan nodded vigorously. He raised his hand and promised sincerely, "It's true. It's truer than a pearl." Shun Dinghua puffed up her cheeks and said, "Liar." Guanshan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "It really doesn't hurt. I'm not lying. How can I prove it to you?" "I don't care. You're always lying to me. We've already agreed on something, but you always fail to keep your promise. You even hurt yourself." Shun Dinghua moved closer and stared at Guanshan. "So, I have to watch over you tonight. Tonight and in the future." Guanshan subconsciously held his breath. Shun Dinghua was too close, and there was a warm breath in the cold air. The girl's fragrance was faintly discernible, and it sprayed on the side of his neck. "Wait, what are you doing? Little comrade Shun, I advise you to have some self-respect." Guanshan took 2 steps back in a panic and sat back on the bed. He didn't have the decisiveness to shoot the monster's head. Shun Dinghua pushed him directly to the inner side of the bed and took up half of the space. She pretended to lie down, and her tone became cheerful again. "I'm watching you. I'm watching you closely, in case you suddenly run to some place that I don't know." Guanshan was completely at a loss. The heavenly soldiers and generals didn't come. Instead, Sun Wukong began to create havoc in his mind. He reached out and pressed Shun Dinghua's shoulder. "Wait, I'll ask the nurse on duty to add another bed." Before Guanshan could finish his words, he was suddenly stunned. When he pressed on Shun Dinghua's shoulder, the latter obviously trembled and shrank. Shun Dinghua's expression was obviously not right. It was a kind of enduring pain. Even the corners of her eyes overflowed in an instant. Guanshan's expression changed immediately. "What's going on?" he asked in a low voice. Shun Dinghua blinked and revealed a cute smile. "Xiaoshan, don't change the topic." "Who is changing the topic?" Guanshan calmed down and re-examined Shun Dinghua at this moment. She was wearing a dress and a knitted jacket. She was probably wearing pajamas at home. She casually put on 2 clothes and went out to find Guanshan. The skirt of the dress and the edge of the jacket had traces of dust and wrinkles. Guanshan reached out and took off Shun Dinghua's jacket. The girl's shoulder had an obvious bruise and abrasions. The other side of her wrist also had bruises. Shen Dinghua felt guilty. She lowered her head pitifully and said, "I was just anxious. I ran out too fast and accidentally fell. It's nothing." Guanshan ignored her and asked her to lie down. Only then did he realize that this person's leg also had lacerations and was even bleeding. It was just covered by the dress. "You call this nothing?" Guanshan took out the bandages and medicine bottle that were originally for him from the drawer next to him. "If I didn't find out, you wouldn't have bandaged it, right? Or planned to sleep here?" Shen Dinghua said coquettishly. "Xiaoshan will definitely find out." Guanshan applied medicine for her, bandaged her, and let her sleep. It was strange. Ever since he used the first aid bandage last time, he learned how to use bandages without a teacher. It was probably the benefit of the simulator. Shen Dinghua did not give up. She opened her arms and said, "I want Xiaoshan to hug me to sleep." Guanshan let out a long sigh. Damn, he was only wearing a hospital gown now. Was this a test of his willpower? But there was no other way. It was a test of his willpower to refuse Shen Dinghua's expectant gaze. Okay, I'll hug you." Guanshan carefully hugged Shen Dinghua as if he was holding a box of gold. He said, "Sleep." Shen Dinghua hugged him back and buried her head in his chest. Guanshan was stiff and could not move. He heard Shen Dinghua's muffled voice. "Liar, it's obviously very painful." "How can it not be painful? You even lied to me that it's nothing." "Oomph, you're such a liar." "Little comrade, Shen only had a fall, and it was already so painful. Xiaoshan was wrapped like this by the doctor, so it must be more painful. How could there be a wound that was not painful?" He just didn't want her to worry. Guanshan stared at Shen Dinghua's head. The girl's black and soft hair spread on the pillow, as gentle as the night. Since his parents died, there was only one person, such a girl, who was willing to run to him regardless of everything. The ward was quiet again. After a while, "Alas, let's stay up all night." Guanshan sighed faintly in his heart, and once again studied the remaining 2 items. At the corner of the corridor, "Are we going back like this?" Tang Ji was confused. He couldn't help but ask. He didn't say anything, did he? Xiaolei looked in the direction of the ward. He said, "Well, this is enough. Let Shuman Lin continue to monitor. When the killer bees take action, we'll go find him." Gao Yi looked at the ward with the lights turned off. She remembered the anxious expression of the girl who passed by. So, it's like this. She suddenly understood that the meaning of no driver or passengers was not for the Tan formation, but for Guanshan himself. If there's nothing, is such an ordinary world what you want? Gao Yi was touched. She turned and said, "Let's go, we still have a mission." Although Chen Yunpeng did not understand. Since the captain understood, then he understood. This gave him a sense of security. So he nodded. "Indeed." Tang Ji said, "Oh," and scratched his head. He still did not understand this atmosphere that seemed to have reached a consensus. Was he the only one who did not understand? P.S. Today's first update. Looking for recommendation votes. Looking for monthly votes. Chapter 25. In the ward, after Guanshan confirmed that Shen Dinghua was asleep, he turned around and opened the backpack interface. The last 2 items he obtained from this simulation were the worker bee pendant and the damaged metal plate. Worker bee pendant was a head accessory. Its attributes were as follows. Worker bee pendant. Effect. Obtain animal communication, bee swarm, ability after wearing it. Description. A glass pendant that seals a strange insect. Due to someone's wish, it has a special ability. It seems to be able to communicate with the same kind. What kind of riddle is this? What does the same kind refer to? Guanshan's mouth twitched. He suspected that this simulator was not only an explosion enthusiast, but it was also a puzzle master. However, regardless of the style of the item description, as long as the ability was clear and useful, it was a good item. Guanshan thought about it, and the ability of the pendant appeared in front of him. Animal communication, bee swarm. Effect, can communicate with bees within 300 meters and sense the other party's location. Description, communication between animals is often more bizarre, faster, and more dangerous. Guanshan was a little surprised. This effect, even if it's not in the simulation, it seems to be quite useful. If I can communicate with the bee swarm, I can know a lot of things that I can't know from a human perspective. If I can use this ability to control the bee swarm, I will definitely be one step ahead of others in terms of intelligence. As a reporter, Guan Shan understood the importance of obtaining first-hand information. He immediately decided to test the effect of this ability first. After Guan Shan equipped the worker bee pendant, he felt a chill on his neck. He looked down and saw a glass pendant with a rope appearing out of thin air on his chest. He curiously picked it up and spun it around. He found that the strange insect sealed inside was actually alive. Its transparent wings were even vibrating slightly. Its antennae, feet, and head would move from time to time to prove that it was not dead. However, the strange thing was that this wasp-like insect's tail did not have a physical stinger. Instead, it was a virtual white stinger. At the same time, Guan Shan also had a strange feeling. It was as if a brand new way of sensing had spread out beyond the five senses. He could not help but close his eyes, and then he felt his senses spreading outwards. In the darkness, some scattered spots of light gradually appeared. Perhaps it was because of the night, but not many of the bees had left their hives. There were only a few scattered idiots who probably didn't make it back in time during the day. Guan Shan focused and sensed their thoughts one by one. Sleep, 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 sleep. Zzz. He directly found a place to sleep. Collect honey, collect honey, collect honey. He was still persevering in his work. It was too messy. Help, help, help. Unfortunately, they were eaten by other carnivorous insects. Go home, go home, go home. This was purely a case of getting lost. Guan Shan opened his eyes, and the corners of his mouth twitched. The swarm could indeed provide information, but the only problem was that the intelligence of the insects did not support their brains to obtain the information they needed. What was concretized were all low-level instinctive thoughts about eating, drinking, and defecating. There was no useful information at all. Unfortunately, the results of the experiment didn't seem to be satisfactory. After all, the swarm is still a group mind. Maybe I should try to guide the entire swarm. Guan Shan thought for a moment and felt that he should think of the problem from the perspective of an animal. Since his thoughts could also affect the swarm, he should be able to find a way to control the swarm after a few more tries. This item would be put aside for the time being. The other item was a brand new type of item that he had never seen before. Broken metal card, special scene activation item. Effect. After use, a simulation will be forcibly activated in the current area, and a special scene will be activated. Description. An old metal plate. It seems to have wandered for a long time. One corner is missing, but it is still carefully preserved. Only the letters B and K that were once engraved on it can be clearly seen. It seems to represent someone's home. Guan Shan thought about the effect for a moment and roughly understood. It's an item that automatically activates the dungeon. He was speechless. Although activating the simulation meant that he could obtain more items and rewards, it also meant that there was a lot of unknown horror and danger. If it wasn't for the fact that the simulator was automatically activated every time, Guan Shan didn't want to enter the simulated scene at all. Every time he entered, it meant that his safety was no longer guaranteed, and he had to fight those strange simulated monsters who would activate the simulation on their own. Guan Shan couldn't help but complain. Idiots? Only an idiot would use this item. However, Guan Shan couldn't bear to sell the only item that could activate the scene to the shop. Forget it, I'll keep it for now. After all, I have more than enough game coins now. There's nothing else I can buy even if I sell it. As for the nuclear flashlight in the shop, he would just let it stay there. Guan Shan closed his eyes again, and the dots of light lit up again. The insect's thoughts were disturbed. He thought about it and communicated with the lost insect bit by bit, guiding it to the correct path home. The next day, Guan Shan went through the discharge procedures, but he didn't go to work. Instead, he prepared to go home. It had to be said here that as a newspaper reporter, Guan Shan didn't actually need to stay in the office every day. He only used the computer for long periods of time when he needed to write articles. At other times, he had to go out to sweep the streets and look for materials, which was the so-called collecting style. He just had to report it. Therefore, it was natural to bring a photographer along. Guan Shan boarded the bus, grabbed the ring, and thought confidently. There was also a small follower behind him. Shen Dinghua followed behind him, got on the bus, and imitated him to grab the ring. Although little comrade Shun was Guan Shan's neighbor, her family background was much better than Guan Shan's. She basically never took the bus when she went out, but she took a personal car. For Shen Dinghua, this was actually a very new experience. Ugh! Shen Dinghua tried her best to stand on tiptoe, and her fingertips could barely touch the edge of the ring. Although she could hold on, it was still very difficult. Guan Shan looked at her sideways. Shen Dinghua was 158 centimeters tall. Well, last night, the cosplay high school students seemed to be taller than her. Shen Dinghua tried a few times, and finally found that she couldn't do it. She noticed Guan Shan's snickering expression and snorted with a red face. Then she reached out, quietly grabbed Guan Shan's clothes, and leaned on him. Guan Shan was silent, pretending not to know that he had such a pendant. About half an hour later, the two got off the bus not far from Shen Dinghua's house. In front of them was a detached villa surrounded by a courtyard wall. PS1. Second update. Begging for recommendation votes. Begging for monthly votes. PS2. Shocking, idling, and touching. Billy exploded. Chapter 26. Shuman Lin felt like the world had changed the moment she woke up. She listened to the information given by the vice captain with a dumbfounded look on her face. She felt like she might have missed an advanced mathematics class. The Killer Bees sent a C-level and D-level member to attack Guan Shan. Minter Xia led a team to ambush them, but they were teleported away by the opponent's space-type ability user. The other team members were also trapped in the same place. About 10 minutes later, the space-type ability user died, and the other team members escaped. When they rushed to the scene, the two Killer Bees members and He Jiang from Team 4 had all died on the spot, leaving only charred remains. Shuman Lin was still a little confused, but when she heard about He Jiang, her back was suddenly covered in cold sweat. The person who had been with her at the bus stop was He Jiang. He Jiang, who had a C-level high-speed regeneration ability, died on the spot. This meant that he had suffered an instant fatal injury that could not be healed at all. Instant kill. The ferocity of this attack was evident from this. But the final result was the deaths of all the attackers. And Team 1 and Xiaolei did not play any role at all. In other words, Guan Shan was alone the whole time. Wait, what about Guan Shan? Shuman Lin subconsciously became nervous. Just now, the vice captain did not mention Guan Shan. Even his C-level ability user had died. Could it be that he had perished together with them? In Shuman Lin's impression, although this person had brutally killed Zhao Hong and his wife at the beginning, it was still Zhao Hong and his wife who lured him in first. Guan Shan was just defending himself, although the way he defended himself was a little scary. However, after observing him for the whole day, Guan Shan only showed the side of him that he was just an ordinary reporter, and he was very dedicated. As a worker at the bottom of the 10 formation, Shuman Lin empathized with Guan Shan's attitude towards Jiang Xin. That was why she had pretended to be a ghost and taught him a lesson. In her eyes, Guan Shan was very scary, but he was also a living person with flesh and blood. Shuman Lin didn't want to witness the death of the person being observed. If that happened, she would be sad for many days. The vice captain said, "Oh, I was just about to tell you about him. The higher-ups want you to continue observing Guan Shan. This is a long-term mission. In other words, your job from now on is to follow him every day and report his actions on time." Shuman Lin was stunned. He's not dead? What death? The vice captain said strangely, "He's fine. I heard that he only suffered some minor injuries. He should be discharged today." He sighed and said, "I really don't know where this person came from. Minter Xia doesn't seem to want to take him in. He's applying for a special position as a non-staff member." "Okay, don't dawdle. Let's go. I'll send you Guan Shan's location." Shuman Lin nodded and looked at the location sent to her. She was a little dazed. He even killed a C-class ability user. The vice captain suddenly said, "Oh, right. Did you use your ability to scare Jiang Xian during the mission yesterday and cause him to be hospitalized?" Shuman Lin was speechless. Why does the vice captain know? Wasn't Minter Xia the one who contacted her? The vice captain continued to nag. If it weren't for Minter Xia's magnanimity, you would have ruined everything. Remember this lesson and don't do it again, okay? Schumann Lin covered her face. Oh, okay. Just how many people knew about this? Oh, I don't have the face to see anyone. Schumann Lin silently activated her ability and reduced her presence to 0. As soon as he entered the house, he turned around the entrance. Guan Shan saw the place that was supposed to be the living room. The sofa was moved to the side, and there was a PS5 connected to the TV. There was an open box of pizza and a can of Coke on the coffee table in the middle. Some of the pizza was knocked over on the ground. It was a mess. It could be seen how anxious Shen Dinghua was when she received the news. Guan Shan squatted down and looked at the pile of pizza that was almost solidified. He could tell at a glance that about half of it was missing. He picked up the pieces one by one and counted them as he picked them up. Then he was surprised. Huh, why are so many pieces missing? Did a rat steal them? Guan Shan wiped his fingers and touched his chin. He said thoughtfully, Little comrade Shun, do you have any clues? Shen Dinghua squatted down and hugged her knees. She tilted her head and said innocently, Oh, I don't know. Maybe there's a big rat in the house. Guan Shan tapped her little head with his finger. You only know how to act cute. Sooner or later, you'll run out of money. Shen Dinghua felt wronged. Obviously, Xiaoshan didn't come. I could only eat pizza pitifully and wait. In the end, I got the news that you were in a car accident. Guan Shan suddenly remembered that Shen Dinghua was the only person who knew that he got on the bus last night. Who knew if those people from last night would come to ask Shen Dinghua? No, he must hide it. Little comrade Shun. Guan Shan pressed Shen Dinghua's shoulder seriously and said, Remember, I walked home by myself last night. On the way, I encountered the bus that exploded. Although Shen Dinghua didn't understand, as long as Guan Shan seriously asked her to do something, she would support him unconditionally. She blinked. Well, Xiaoshan walked home by himself. I remember. Is there a reward? Guan Shan pointed to the stains on the ground and said, The reward is that you don't have to clean up by yourself. Shen Dinghua lowered her head in disappointment, like a withered sunflower. What were you expecting? Guan Shan said amusedly, You go take a shower and change clothes first. I'll help you clean up. Isn't that good? Shen Dinghua muttered. How is that good? I'll ask the cleaning Annie to come over. The carpet is also dirty. I can't ask you to wash it. Guan Shan's mouth twitched. He almost forgot that there was a gap called class between him and the girl in front of him. Evil capitalist. Shen Dinghua saw Guan Shan's gloomy face, so she stuck out her tongue and quickly ran away. She ran upstairs to take a shower. Guan Shan shook his head and helped Shen Dinghua clean up the table and floor. He packed up the trash and left the rest to the cleaning Annie. At this time, Guan Shan's phone suddenly rang. He took it out and saw that it was Li Jiying, president. Guan Shan was stunned and felt a little guilty. After all, he had just taken on an important task. It seemed unreliable to go out the next day to collect literature. However, with director Peng backing him up, there should be no problem for him to get the content out today. Guan Shan picked up the phone and heard the person on the other end say, Guan Shan, you went out to sweep the streets today? Guan Shan nodded and said, Yes, President. I saw that the materials about the fire in the manuscript library were a little old, so I plan to interview some recent typical cases. It's good that you're so attentive, Li Jiying praised. Then, she changed the topic, but there's no hurry. I have another task here. Guan Shan wanted to say something, but Li Jiying continued. Count it as overtime pay. Guan Shan shut up. PS1, knock knock knock. Looking for recommendation votes. Looking for monthly votes. All kinds of requests. Degree Omega? PS2. Thank you to June's Holy Night, Immortal Chunxio, and Solitary Journey for their tips. Chapter 27. Jiang Xian was suddenly injured last night. I don't know how long he will be hospitalized, so he asked me for a month's leave. He has a few interviews that have been put on hold. I hope he can take over. Li Jiying's cold and hoarse voice sounded over the phone. If Guan Shan were to describe it, he would think that Li Jiying's voice was like frosted glass. One could imagine the two textures of crisp and hazy at the same time. It was very unique. Guan Shan sat on the sofa and was stunned when he heard that. Mr. Jiang was suddenly injured? He said subconsciously, This has nothing to do with me. I went back earlier than him yesterday. Li Jing was amused by his tone, which sounded like he was about to cry out for injustice. I'm not here to criticize you. Why are you in such a hurry? Besides, this can't have anything to do with you. Jiang Xian kept saying that he ran into a ghost in the hospital. Huh? Ran into a ghost? Guanshan had even thought of what to do if Jiang Xian tried to frame him. However, he did not expect that this guy was injured because he ran into a ghost. Was his brain damaged? Li Jing said helplessly. I also thought it was unbelievable. However, Xiao Wang, who took Jiang Xian to the hospital last night, said that he fell down in the corridor for no reason. After that, he pointed to the corridor where there was nothing and said that he saw a ghost. She had a headache. Later, I asked a few editors who were still at the news agency at that time. The answers I got were similar. In other words, Guanshan almost laughed out loud, but he still pretended to be serious. Mr. Jiang suddenly lost his mind? Li Jing said, I'm not sure yet. However, he fell down so hard that he even lost his front teeth. He probably won't be able to return to the news agency for a while. Jiang Xian was such a prideful person that he even waxed his hair when he went to work. Now that he lost his front teeth, wouldn't he have to stay at home and not come out? God really opened his eyes. Guanshan laughed secretly. Little did he know that God was squatting behind the sofa he was sitting on, covering his face and crying. There was one more person. She had to say it again. The only fortunate thing was that these people couldn't see her and didn't know that she was the one who did it. At this point, there was nothing to be afraid of. However, at this time, Shuman Lin forgot one thing, and that was she did this in a newspaper office. As for the news agency, there was no lack of gossip. Guanshan pondered for a moment and muttered, All right, but there are so many reporters in the newspaper office. I'm sure some of them are free. Why do you have to look for someone like me, who is currently working? I'm afraid it's because these interviews are a little difficult. Li Jing smiled and said, You are indeed very smart. The reason why Jiang Xian didn't do these news materials is because they are not easy to do. She then sent 3 documents. When Guanshan opened it, he immediately knew why it was difficult. Whoa, one is a holdout, the other is an unsolved case of 2 lives, and the last one is a medical dispute. Who would want to get involved? Guanshan felt troubled just by looking at the title of the document. Needless to say, the holdout was the most stubborn kind of person. It was basically useless to say anything to them. It was a situation where they couldn't be communicated with. If you wanted to talk to them, you had to first confirm whether you wanted to persuade them to give up and how many numbers you brought to show your sincerity. If it was not to their liking, then the communication would basically fail. Although reporters weren't old ladies and didn't have the ability to persuade. However, reporters had to ask for something and get some information before they could be considered reporters. Otherwise, what was the use of having them? As for the murder case and medical dispute, it was even more terrifying. Sometimes, it would directly threaten the safety of the victim, not only the perpetrator, but also the victim. If the victim's emotions were unstable, then the unlucky one would be the reporter who got involved. The corner of Guanshan's mouth twitched. He asked tentatively, if these 3 articles were to be made into reports, what would be the extent of it? Would it be to follow the trend and take up a small page and vaguely mention a few words? Or would it be to follow up and dig deeper into the information that others didn't get? Li Jing didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked, You have been in charge of the electronic version of the content recently, right? Yes. In fact, when I took over this newspaper, I knew that it was destined to gradually decline. This is because the development of new media is too fast, and the print media is far from enough. Li Jing said faintly, So I decided to let it transform and integrate into the new media and the internet. The electronic version is just the first step. After a while, I will set up a separate department to be in charge of this. The most important step is to let the public notice the appearance of the Hangzhou Evening News. Guanshan looked at the information in his hands. So, first of all, there must be enough shocking content. These 3 materials are the ones that only we have a deeper understanding of. Jiang Xian's connections have helped a lot. Li Jing said, and your task is to continue the investigation and give a satisfactory answer. Guanshan thought of what Peng Fei said. At present, it seemed that Li Jing really wanted to train him to be her vanguard. This should be a test, right? Guanshan took a deep breath. I will try my best. I can't guarantee that I can do the best, but at least I can promise to do what I can. Li Jing seemed to be quite satisfied with his answer. She said, then I look forward to your good news. These 3, plus the Fire Safety Special Edition, can be done slowly. The Special Edition can be done before the Fire Safety Festival. The rest can be followed up slowly. Don't have too much psychological pressure. The call ended. Guanshan took a deep breath. He turned his head and saw Shun Dinghua coming down from upstairs. She had changed into a set of clothes for going out. The linen spaghetti dress was fluttering in the wind. It covered her ankles, making Shun Dinghua, who was already petite, look even lighter. Coupled with the chiffon blouse and her shoulder-length black hair with a trace of moisture, her flawless face was very cute. However, after so many years on the mountain, Shun Dinghua had seen all kinds of situations, so she was exceptionally calm. Was that the president's voice just now? Shun Dinghua vaguely heard it when she was upstairs. She came over and asked curiously. Guanshan nodded and showed her the 3 documents. The president just gave me the task personally. It seems that I will be busy in the future. Shun Dinghua sat next to him. After a few glances, she realized that something was wrong. She wrinkled her nose. Aren't you making things difficult for me? Guanshan spread his hands. It can't be helped. This was originally Jiang Xian's task. Who knew that guy would suddenly be hospitalized last night? Shun Dinghua blinked. Hospitalized? She poked Guanshan's arm. Xiaoshan, don't tell me you beat him up and sent him to the hospital? Guanshan was speechless. Am I that kind of person? He has a guilty conscience. He encountered a ghost. He briefly told her what had happened. Then he said, I just looked at it. Among these 3, if you want to dig deeper, the least difficult one is the most frightening one. Guanshan opened the file of the murder case. This, the murder of the owner of the small restaurant and the waitress. At this moment, Shuman Lin, who was not noticed by the 2 of them, used her elbow to support herself on the back of the sofa. She poked her head out between Guanshan and Shun Dinghua and looked at the documents curiously. When she saw the names on the documents, she couldn't help but open her eyes wide. Zhao Hong and Fong Minmin. P.S. Boo-hoo, please recommend me. Please recommend me. Chapter 28. Shuman Lin didn't expect that Guanshan was investigating Zhao Hong and his wife. She stared blankly at Guanshan's contemplative expression. Damn it, aren't you the murderer? I saw you kill the 2 of them one by one with my own eyes, as if you were killing chickens. And now you're here to investigate their cause of death? Shuman Lin's mouth twitched, and she didn't know what to say. Forget it, as long as you're happy. Guanshan opened a file on his computer and said, I heard about this case a few days ago. It was originally a missing persons case, but now it seems that the bodies have been found, so it was determined to be murder. There were 2 victims, Zhao Hong and Fong Minmin. One was 35 years old, and the other was 32 years old. They had been married for 6 years and had a 4-year-old son. There was also a photo attached to the file. It was a family photo of Zhao Hong and his family, and they were smiling brightly in the photo. About 3 months ago, Zhao Hong and Fong Minmin disappeared at the same time. There were signs that someone had broken into their home. This case was considered a missing persons case. Now the bodies have been found, but the police haven't announced the cause of death, and there's no news about the murderer. It's an unsolved case. Guanshan moved the file to the bottom, and there was a blurry photo. It was a photo taken from a long distance away in front of Zhao Hong's house. A few people were sneaking around the corridor, and it seemed that they were trying to pry open the door. Guanshan said firmly, I don't know where Jiang Xian got it, but these people are most likely the murderer. No, although I don't know if these people have anything to do with this case. The murderer is indeed you, so there's no need to look for them. Shuman Lin saw that Guanshan was so serious that she couldn't help but complain. She looked at the family photo again and was confused. Did this person really not know? Or was he pretending not to know? It shouldn't be difficult to recognize Zhao Hong and his wife. Shuman Lin secretly made a note of this. However, She was also curious about what happened to Zhao Hong and his wife before they became experimental subjects. After all, by the time the Tin Formation took action, it would already be after the event. As for Shuman Lin, a low-level worker with a special ability, she could only obey orders. Since there was no news from the Tin Formation, these people should be ordinary people, and the arrest should be the responsibility of ordinary people. Shen Dinghua frowned. Xiao Shan, are you going to find out who these people are? That's too dangerous, and it's not our job. Guan Shan shook his head. Of course I won't take the risk. It's not worth it, but I still have to go to Zhao Han's house to take a look. Guan Shan and Shen Dinghua walked in the residential area. This area was the LC district. Old apartment buildings and brick houses formed a scene of row upon row. All kinds of vehicles were parked in the narrow aisles and alleys. The pedestrians were sparse, and it was very quiet at noon. Here we are. This is Zhao Hong's house, and, well, it turns out that the nail house is also in an apartment building nearby. Maybe we can meet today. Guan Shan's gaze fell on a house in front of him. This house had a total of 2 floors. The first floor was converted into a shop, and the second floor was the living area. Zhao Hong and his wife run a small restaurant here. Now the shutter door on the first floor was closed, and clothes of different sizes were hanging by the window on the second floor. There seemed to be traces of people living here. After Zhao Hong and his wife died, their son was raised by Zhao Hong's mother. The other relatives didn't want to get into trouble at all. Even Fong Minmin's parents avoided it. Shen Dinghua said softly, looking at Guan Shan faintly. After all, Guan Shan had a similar experience. Guan Shan smiled at her and said, "Let's go. Let's try knocking on the door." After walking around, they found the side door of the house. The person who opened the door was an old woman in her 60s or 70s, followed by a little boy. It was Zhao Hong's mother, Yu Zhen, and his son, Zhao Jie. It was said that Zhao Jie was at the scene of the crime that night. He was so frightened that he became mute. The old woman looked vigilant and said with an accent, "What are you doing here?" Guan Shan's expression didn't change. He showed a professional smile and said, "Hello, we are from the demolition office." Shuman Lin, who was following silently, was stunned. Huh? Shen Dinghua's lips curled up a little. Xiao Shan was going to fool people again. The old woman was stunned. Demolition office. Isn't the nearby Yulan apartment building about to be demolished? Guan Shan smiled and said, "The 2 of us are in charge. The demolition of this area is to build infrastructure, such as supermarkets and shopping malls. It will be more convenient to buy things when the time comes. It is a very beneficial project. But the family surnamed Qin has been unwilling to move and cooperate with the communication. The construction can't start for a long time, so we want to ask the residents nearby for the reason." The old woman's vigilant expression relaxed. She muttered, "So it's about this." Guan Shan said eagerly, "Granny, do you know the relevant situation?" He wasn't doing this on a whim. It was a plan to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. On the one hand, it was to relax Zhao Hong's mother's vigilance and make it easier to contact her later. On the other hand, he found that Zhao Hong's house was the only restaurant in the neighborhood. In other words, most of the residents here should have eaten at his house. If he wanted to get relevant information, Zhao Hong's mother, who was a member of the community's intelligence agency, was undoubtedly the best choice. The old woman curled her lips and said, "Someone has already asked. We also want them to move out, but everyone else has already moved out. What can this Qin guy do if he doesn't move out?" She continued in a low voice, "That family is very strange. Qin Deguang often comes to my house to eat. Every time, he only orders a bottle of water and a bowl of rice. He doesn't work. I don't know what he does all day." Guan Shan was puzzled. "He doesn't order food?" The old woman nodded. "Yes, don't you think it's strange?" Guan Shan asked, "Is he like this every day?" "He doesn't work or interact with people." The old woman shook her head. "Not really. He will chat with people. They are often strangers that I have never seen before. They talk for a long time and then go somewhere together." Guan Shan frowned. This was too strange. It wasn't strange for an unemployed person to know many people. What was strange was that Zhao Hong's mother had never seen these people before. This stubborn family seemed to be a little tricky. However, this was already a new clue. His luck was good. It seemed that most of the people who came to ask Zhao Hong's mother were only concerned about the murder case and didn't think that this was actually a very good source of information. By the way, Guanshan asked again, Qin de Guang should still have a wife and daughter. Do they still live there? They went back to their parents' house long ago. The old woman shook her head. This building has been emptied. There are compensations for the demolition. Only Qin de Guang didn't leave. He didn't leave. His wife and children suffered with him. People came to ask him questions every day. When they couldn't stand it, they went back. Guanshan nodded. Okay, thank you for your cooperation. I may have some things to ask you later. Is it convenient? The old woman hesitated and said, Come at noon. There are more people at other times. It seemed that she was really annoyed. Guanshan secretly thought. Then he said that he wanted to buy some water to drink and successfully entered the small restaurant that had been closed for several months. After walking around the restaurant, he didn't find any new clues. Guanshan could only leave in disappointment. The old woman even walked him out for a while. When they left, the little boy saw a cat running outside. He chased after it and was about to fall. Shuman Lin subconsciously followed 2 steps and reached out to support him. However, she quickly controlled herself. At this time, she suddenly felt a slight vibration on her wrist. She was at a loss for a while. Then she remembered that she still had an energy level detector that she hadn't handed in. Shuman Lin looked at it doubtfully. D level. Her pupils contracted. This child is a psychic. P.S. Looking for recommendation votes. Looking for monthly votes. Looking for follow-ups. Readers who love books have to move their hands and click on the newest chapters every day. This is very important for new books. Chapter 29. The afternoon sun was dazzling. Shuman Lin froze in place, cold sweat dripping from her forehead, her mind in a mess. The little boy fell to the ground, crying loudly, and was helped up by the old lady. He did not look like an ability user at all. How could he be an ability user? The people who investigated Zhao Hong and his wife should have already checked the energy level in the area. If Zhao Jie was an ability user, he would not have been missed, unless Zhao Jie suddenly became an ability user in the past few days. Then, there are 2 possibilities. 1. Zhao Jie suddenly awakened. The second, Zhao Jie was swapped. Shuman Lin immediately connected to the channel in the headset and directly contacted Xiaolei and quickly said, Mentor Xia, there's an emergency. I found an energy level in Zhao Jie's body, and it's a D level. Xiaolei was also stunned and said, D level? For years old? Impossible. For a direct awakening to reach D level, the body must be fully developed or it will die on the spot. No exceptions. Shuman Lin was a little nervous, but I'm sure the energy level detector is working. It's not really broken, is it? Xiaolei was silent for a moment and said, No, there's an exception. Shuman Lin, huh? Xiaolei said in a deep voice, Among the 2 killer bees that died last night, there was a 6-year-old child. Lin Shuman was stunned. Killer bees and children should not be 2 words that were completely unrelated. But now they were pieced together in a mess. Xiaolei said, But that was not a natural awakening, but a deformed product that the killer bees obtained through the sublimation sugar, overdrafting their life to become a D-level ability user. Only this way can remove the restriction I just mentioned. That means Shuman Lin swallowed. After the killer bees experimented on Zhao Hong and his wife, they secretly made a move on their son. Xiaolei said in a low voice, That's right. I'll send someone over right away. Pay attention to the surroundings. The killer bees might. No, they definitely have spies all around. If you're right, then Zhao Jie, as an experimental subject, should be more successful than his parents. It's impossible for the killer bees to not monitor him. Xiaolei said helplessly. Moreover, Guanshan is the focus of their attention. Now he's directly at the muzzle of the gun. He suspected that this kid was doing it on purpose. He must have done it on purpose. Zhao Hong and his wife were both killed by him. How could he not know? You're still pretending to be investigating. Xiaolei paused. Could it be that he had come here to lead them to discover that Zhao Jie had already been attacked by the killer bees? The more he thought about it, the more reasonable it seemed. Then he felt that Guanshan was more and more mysterious. He even knew about this kind of thing. What was his ability? Time was tight. Xiao Lei ordered the first team to hurry up and move out. But he heard Schumann Lin say in a trembling voice, the number of energy levels suddenly increased. I saw a few suspected members of the killer bees walking over. What do we do? Xiao Lei heard her panic and was stunned. He said, calm down. How many people are there? What about their levels? Schumann Lin said, there should be 3 or 4 leaders. They're all DS. The rest should be E and F levels. Xiao Lei let out a sigh of relief. Then, what are you afraid of? With Guanshan here, nothing will happen. Schumann Lin was about to cry. I'm just worried about what will happen if he kills everyone. Should we save them and keep them alive for interrogation? Xiao Lei, that seems to be the case. Xiao Lei was confused for a moment. He twitched his mouth and said, then you fight for it. Just don't expose yourself. Schumann Lin was talking to Xiao Lei nervously. Guanshan and Shun Dinghua left Zhao Hong's house. He saw Zhao Hong's mother pull her grandson and quickly close the door. Looking at the deserted house, he felt that this murder case had indeed destroyed an entire family. He shook his head. The moment he turned around, he heard a mechanical voice suddenly ring out. Scene scan complete. Generating horror game. Generated horror game. Zombie siege. Plot loading. Please wait. F***CK. It's the middle of the day. What kind of horror game are you generating in broad daylight? Besides, how does this look like a zombie siege? Guanshan was stunned, dumbfounded. He thought that suddenly triggering the simulator in the middle of the night on the bus was the limit. He didn't expect there to be something worse. Playing a horror game in broad daylight. This simulator must be seriously ill. Oh no, little comrade Shun is still here. Before the view changed, Guanshan pressed Shun Dinghua's shoulder with the fastest speed in his life and turned her around. Then he said seriously, don't look back. Don't hear anything. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll become a psychopath in your eyes. Shun Dinghua was confused, but she still obediently turned around and covered her ears. Guanshan just breathed a sigh of relief. He saw the light in front of him quickly change. From the bright sun, it directly turned into a dusky evening. The darkness spread. The sky was covered with low clouds. It was very oppressive. It seemed like there would be heavy rain at any time. The exterior of the buildings on both sides of the alley was peeling and aging. They gradually turned into ruins. The walls on both sides of the road were smeared with flesh and blood. There was even a barbed wire fence on it. And on the side of the street lamp, there was a corpse hanging, dripping blood. There were also red-eyed crows cawing. F***CK. I just complained that it's daytime, and you turned it into night in an instant? The atmosphere team is too efficient. I love it, I love it. Guanshan praised the simulator and gave it a middle finger. Loading of plot completed. You are playing an inferior horror game. Guanshan was so angry that he laughed. You're quite self-aware, aren't you? You're too lazy to think about the plot? Shoddy and cliché horror game. Cliché apocalyptic setting. Cliché Resident Evil. Cliché zombie siege. Everything is cliché. You're trapped here like a gladiator in ancient Rome. There's only one thing you have to do. Pick up your weapon and kill them, or be killed by them. Asterisk note. Only by killing the final boss can this simulation end. In the field of vision, there were more than a dozen staggering zombies coming from different directions. They were in different shapes and sizes. Their clothes were tattered. Some were crawling upside down. Some were connected together like centipedes. Some were like the Hulk, and some were crooked. At a glance, there were zombies ranging from level 4 to level 7. They opened their rotten mouths and rushed towards Guanshan. Under the backdrop of the night, these strange-looking zombies howled and showed a ferocious and terrifying posture. Roar! A roar came from the side. Guanshan turned his head and saw a giant zombie roaring. It held a chainsaw and fell from the sky with its butt facing down. Guanshan was startled and took 2 steps back. He quickly took out his backpack and took out his weapon. Because he didn't dare to make too much noise, he didn't take out the Glock and the boning knife. Instead, he took out the crowbar. He took a deep breath. Innis, after all, it's also a door, right? PS1, second update. Requesting recommendation votes. Requesting monthly votes. PS2, Thank you, honey-flavored salted fish, equals octopus equals. Reader 1413686948581052416. Hypocritical Green Vegetables by Tian Ping. The Promised Illusory Reward. Chapter 30. Crowbar. Effect. Open all doors that cannot be opened. Description. The holy sword of physics, you deserve to have it. Guan Shan saw the description of the crowbar in the beginner survival package and felt that it would be very useful. This was a crowbar with a lot of personality. It only opened doors that could not be opened. But the question was, what kind of opening was it, and what kind of door was it? If a door was a door, would an electric door be considered a door? Would a door be considered a door? Everything that had the same function as a door but could not be opened, would it be considered a door? Other effects, in terms of scope and function, the restrictions were relatively strict. At least, it would not give you the opportunity to create ambiguity. But this crowbar was different. Its description was only one sentence and did not make any restrictions. This was unreasonable, which meant the simulator was intentional. This crowbar was very likely to have no restrictions. In the previous simulation, Guanshan used this crowbar to open the door of the bus that was blocked by the meat wall. And now, Guanshan was going to use it to prove his conjecture. Shwa. Zzzzzzzzzz dash. The giant zombie roared as it descended and charged towards Guanshan with a chainsaw in its hand, unleashing a move of Mount Tai. This was originally a very oppressive move, especially when the opponent's eyes was similar to the restaurant chef. It was as if a mountain was pressing down. The zombie's information also appeared. Slaughter a giant zombie, LV7, HP, 1800, description, novice kills the creator. If you see it, maybe you can reload the file. Although this monster was only level 7, its HP was thicker than the chef's. It was double Guanshan's. If it was another time, Guanshan would definitely dodge this move, and then look for another opportunity to counterattack. But in Guanshan's eyes, this position was too good. If he did not give a try, Guanshan felt that he would be letting down the opportunity it created for him. Therefore, Guanshan took a step forward and activated gravity control to reduce his weight and increase his speed. He tilted his head and dodged the first attack of the chainsaw. Slide step, bend over, clench both hands, and raise the crowbar. The sharp and curved head of the crowbar drew a perfect arc, accurately hooking a part of the muscle from bottom to top. Zombie's roar changed its tone, and its face instantly became hundreds of times more ferocious. The rotten flesh on its face twisted and fell off. However, this zombie wasn't an ordinary one. It was a zombie, so it was a little more vicious than ordinary zombies. With a ferocious glint in its eyes, it swung the chainsaw down and smashed it on the ground. It exerted force with its arms, tried to use the reaction force to pull itself out. Although Xiao Gun's hook had already sunk into his flesh, forcefully trying to break free would definitely result in a huge injury. However, if he allowed the internal organs to continue, the consequences would be even more unimaginable. It made this decision like a gecko cutting off its tail. Its courage was commendable. However, how could Guanshan allow it to do as it wished? Gravity control lasted for a full 5 seconds, and within this time, 50 kilograms of gravity could be applied to any target in any way. Get down here. Guanshan withdrew the power that he had used to accelerate himself and applied it to the body of the deceased. Down. The 50 kilograms weight was the last straw that broke the camel's back, pulling the monster into the abyss. Poochie. The crowbar completely sank in. Guanshan slid, pulled the crowbar, and pried open a door. He didn't dare to stay. He withdrew the gravity and slid away like a fish, deliberately staying far away. Then, Guanshan knew what it meant to open the door. We didn't know what happened to this gigantic zombie, but its body swelled up like a balloon at this moment. Even the outlines of its internal organs were protruding from its skin. Its lower body instantly lost control of its bladder, and its mouth was wide open, but it couldn't even make a sound. After a crazy distortion, starting from the bottom, it was split into 2 halves from the middle by an invisible force. The water flowed to the ground, and the rotten blood was like rain. Instant kill. It's not bad, Guanshan raised his eyebrows, then looked at the clean crowbar in his hand. I feel a little disgusted. Forget it. It's a simulation anyway. It's not real. Guanshan comforted himself. He picked up the dropped items of the giant zombie. High-speed chainsaw, damage, 300 description. Let's play a game. Guanshan was a little surprised. This chainsaw's damage is not bad. It's 3 times higher than the boning knife. This level 7 monster is stronger than the boss in the carnivorous restaurant. It seems that the newbie dungeon is really taking care of the players. Guanshan shook the crowbar in his hand, walked over the dead bodies on the ground, and walked toward the group of zombies that suddenly stopped. He murmured, "If that's the case, let's experiment more. There are so many monsters to farm, and this time, it's not particularly scary." The zombies on the opposite side howled and rushed toward him like a group of demons. Well, it's still a little scary. What happened next? For the worker bees that were ordered to monitor Zhao Jia, it was like a nightmare. They were really stupid, really. They only knew that this person called Guanshan was very strong, but they didn't know that this person's methods could be so cruel. At first, they thought that the abnormal death of the D-class physical ability user was just a coincidence. But they didn't expect that it was actually a hobby. If they could do it again, they would choose to observe secretly instead of confronting this terrifying monster directly. After all, no one wanted to be dragged into hemorrhoid surgery when they didn't have hemorrhoids. After witnessing the tragic deaths of 8 of his companions, the D-class ability, user codenamed Worker B17, finally collapsed. He was a mutant ability user. When he activated his ability, he would mutate into a werewolf, and his speed and strength would be greatly improved. He would also get a lot of wolf-related enhancements. But it was useless. No matter how fast he attacked, how high the frequency of his attacks was, and how badly the monster-like young man was injured, it was as if nothing had happened, and he didn't even frown. As long as he ate something that looked like a baby's heart, he would recover in an instant. And when he tried to approach, Guanshan would find the right time to reduce the gravity, making him slow down and then instantly counterattack. All his attacks were like hitting cotton. It was useless, 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 useless. Worker B17 had never experienced such panic. From fighting desperately to fleeing in panic, only a few minutes had passed. But the person on the opposite side seemed to be even more scared than him. Guanshan's face was stained with blood, and he looked very nervous, as if he had scared Guanshan, but the latter changed his hand to the boning knife and cut off his arm. Worker B17's hands had been cut off, and he wriggled on the ground with his tail between his legs, trembling as he looked at the crowbar in Guanshan's hand. "I beg you, let me go. I'll tell you everything. The killer bees did experiments on Zhao Jia, but he was only one of them. I'll tell you everything I know about the remaining experimental sites." Guanshan was indifferent, and he raised the crowbar, thinking strangely, "Why is this monster so noisy? It's roaring nonstop. Is it threatening me?" P.S. First update. Looking for recommendation votes. Looking for monthly votes. Chapter 31. From Guanshan's point of view, this hairy, chimera-like zombie was only roaring and making some incomprehensible sounds. Even after its arms were chopped off, it was still struggling fiercely, glaring fiercely at Xian. This guy's killing intent had not been extinguished. It still wanted to take the opportunity to counterattack. Guanshan felt that he had completely seen through this monster's inner thoughts. Although as a monster, you are indeed very dedicated and dedicated. Guanshan praised this elite monster's attitude. But as a player, the greatest respect I can give you is to use my strongest weapon to kill you, and then finish you off. Now Guanshan's strongest weapon was not the boning knife, nor the chainsaw, but the crowbar. If he did not have the crowbar, facing that giant zombie, Guanshan would have to fight it for 300 rounds. But with the crowbar, he could instantly kill it. Of course, if the opponent did not have any special equipment, then the weapon would be useless. Worker B17 watched as Guanshan picked up the crowbar. He was in complete despair. The ground was littered with broken limbs, blood, and all kinds of bodily fluids, filling up the narrow alley. emitting a hot and fishy smell. For Worker Bee 17, this scene was no less terrifying than hell, because these were the corpses of people he knew. He saw with his own eyes that they were opened alive by the crowbar. This was definitely the most horrifying and painful death he had ever seen in his life. Just by looking at the expressions of those people before they died, it was as if he could personally experience the extreme pain. Even if Killer Bee committed all kinds of crimes, they were an organization that could not be any more evil. Which member of the organization did not have a few lives on their hands? When they suddenly died in the middle of a mission, it was normal. But Worker Bee 17 did not expect that one day he would die in such a way. He crawled on the ground with a hoarse voice. Please, please, I beg you, don't come over. I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you everything. Don't kill me. Schumann Lin came back to her senses. Her face was pale as she covered her mouth to suppress the urge to vomit. She repeatedly tried to convince herself that these were all heinous Killer Bee members and that they deserved to be punished. Only then did she manage to restrain herself from wanting to run away. Wait, this person seems to be taking the initiative to say that he is going to confess and provide intelligence support. Schumann Lin was taken aback for a moment before she was overjoyed. He didn't even need to interrogate him. How lucky, seeing that the only survivor had been intimidated by Guan Shan and was about to reveal the Killer Bee's other experimental sites. But Guan Shan had already picked up the crowbar and was ready to strike again. Schumann Lin felt that she really had foresight. She had guessed from the very beginning that the reason why the Tan formation was obstructed from obtaining information was definitely not because of the stubbornness of the Killer Bees. These people had not undergone any special training. They were just some superpowered people who had gathered together. Other than having abilities, they were just ordinary people in terms of thinking and thinking. Facing an existence like Guan Shan, it was normal for him to lose his composure. So what should we do now? Schumann Lin was anxious. This is one of the few times where we can get a lot of information about the Killer Bee plan. If we miss this opportunity, we will miss a lot of opportunities to save the victims. But she couldn't deactivate her superpower. She couldn't expose herself. Xiao Lei's voice suddenly sounded in her earpiece. His tone was very serious. Attention, the first group is being held back by a C-class. He is very strong and is less than 100 meters away from you. He is now on the move and will soon rush into the alley. Remind Guan Shan. Otherwise, if he hastily fights, the situation may not be good. Schumann Lin immediately responded. Then she took a deep breath, picked up a stone, and smashed it against the water pipe next to her. Bang! It attracted Guan Shan's attention. This was the simplest method that Schumann Lin could think of. Although she was the one who did this, she couldn't help but cover her face. Guan Shan was shocked by this movement. He quickly turned around but didn't find any new monsters. There was only an empty wire fence, a wasteland building, and a pile of corpses that he had just created. Caw, caw. The crow cawed twice and flew away. Hey, it can't be. He twitched the corner of his mouth. Looking at the stone on the ground, he felt apprehensive. This is a zombie siege, right? Why do I feel like there is a supernatural atmosphere? However, after being interrupted, Guan Shan didn't continue his inhumane actions against the elite zombie. He straightened his back, looked left and right, walked over, and picked up the stone to examine it. He didn't find anything strange. Strange, someone must have thrown it here. Guan Shan frowned in thought. As his level increased, his perception of his surroundings became more sensitive. When his stone was thrown, it was obviously flat and didn't fall from a high place. Could it be that there is someone here? Guan Shan was deep in thought. Worker Bee 17 was overjoyed and almost burst into tears. He thought that Guan Shan had finally given him a way out. He spilled all the information he knew. Schumann Lin quickly noted it down. Just when Guan Shan's research was fruitless and he was about to return to kill the zombie, he heard a series of footsteps. These weren't ordinary footsteps. They were rapid footsteps that were caused by the rapid shuttling back and forth between the buildings. Guan Shan immediately turned around and saw a creature that looked like an alien appear on the wall outside the building. Its deformed face looked like it was wearing a steel mask. Its eyes were completely black with a hint of scarlet. Its lower limbs and knee joints were bent backwards, and there was a thick tail that swung back and forth behind it. Its sharp claws were deeply embedded in the whitewashed wall, and mottled dust fell down with a rustling sound. Information appeared. Boss, Speed Walker, Alien Zombie, LV, HP, 800, description, it only needs a moment to kill you. Hiss, it opened its bloody mouth and growled at Guan Shan in a provocative manner. Swoosh, the next moment, its figure disappeared instantly. Guan Shan's expression immediately became serious. I was wondering why I didn't see the boss from the beginning. It was waiting for an opportunity to sneak attack. It's level 10, but its HP is only 800. The driver from before had 10,000 HP. With such strange attributes, it means that this boss's attack power must be very high. Seeing that the alien had disappeared, he didn't think and immediately activated gravity manipulation and rolled to the side. The next moment, he heard a burst of wind. The sharp claws instantly cut through the air and even brought out some sonic booms. It was very terrifying. Guan Shan, who had escaped the attack, turned around and saw that the alien had a strange smile on its face. It kicked off the wall and shot in another direction. Guan Shan's heart sank. That was where Shun Dinghua was. PS1. Second update. Looking for recommendation votes. Looking for monthly votes. PS2. Thank you, Meow, Guan Yunwu, and Xingyuli for your tips. Chapter 32. 3 minutes ago, the members of the first team of the Yohao group arrived at the scene and were attacked by a C-class Arcanist. It was obviously a metamorphic Arcanist. His whole body was covered in scales, his hands and feet had turned into claws, and his gray skin was covered with rough wrinkles. His face was flat, his mouth cracked to the roots of his ears, his eyes turned into vertical pupils, and his nose became 2 holes, but his ears and hair remained. It was a large lizard with some humanoid features. At first glance, the uncanny valley effect was extremely serious. This was a common characteristic of metamorphic Arcanists. The higher the level, the deeper the degree of metamorphic Arcanists. In the end, they would even become completely unlike humans. This Arcanist climbed on the roof of the house, his skin color changing almost no different from the roof, and was preparing to ambush Guan Shan. The trio didn't notice it when they first arrived, but soon, the other party chose to take the initiative to attack. The big lizard's leg muscles tightened, and in an instant, like a spring compressed to the extreme, it changed from static to high-speed movement. Its speed was incredible, and if it didn't leave after images in the vision of witnesses, it would even look like teleportation. With such speed, it was difficult for people to react, let alone a sneak attack. Swoosh! Gao Yi relied on her instinctive vigilance to pull out her sword to block, barely blocking the pair of sharp claws. What great strength! Her heart sank, and she only had time to draw half of her sword. The scabbard and blade each blocked a claw, trembling slightly because of the opponent's strength. Gao Ye's white cheek was scratched by the fingernail tip, and a trace of blood flowed down. But her sword also sank into the opponent's palm. The lizard's vertical pupils blinked, and it stuck out its tongue and growled with a mocking expression. Gao Yi stared at the opponent and shouted in a deep voice, "Spread out." It's Worker B3. Its ability is lizard form, and it's best at high-speed attacks with great strength. Same rules. Tang Ji will help me interfere with the opponent's thoughts, and Qin Yunpeng will open a 300-meter barrier. I'll hold him back, and you guys pay attention to moving. Don't let him touch you, or you'll die immediately. The so-called barrier referred to Qin Yunpeng's ability, protective membrane. As the name implied, it was to create an invisible protective membrane. The film had an area of 1,000 square meters and was only nanometer thick. It could withstand about 100 pounds of force and could even be soundproof. He could use this ability on himself to stack the membranes and turn them into his own shield. He could also spread them out to protect buildings. It could be said that Qin Yunpeng's ability had saved the Tan formation a lot of money. Qin Yunpeng's 300-meter barrier was basically 2 layers of membrane. There was still a little left to protect them. Tang Ji was long gone. He replied through the earpiece, 1 second. This meant that the ability would be activated in 1 second. While they were communicating, Worker B3 didn't stay idle. It kept retreating and attacking, its afterimages lingering in the air. Its movements couldn't be seen clearly, but it was dazzling. Ding, ding, dang, dang, dang. The sound of claws and blades clashing could be heard. Takaya calmed herself down and counted silently. The attacking movements of Worker B3 suddenly stopped abruptly. She stopped in place, and her gaze instantly became unfocused, as if she had lost her soul. This is my chance. In the next second, Takaya took a deep breath and stood with her blade. She condensed ki on the blade, drew her blade, and swung out a turbulent wave of ki. Blade skill, Dragon Terror. Boom! This wave of air was 3 meters high. Suddenly, it was wrapped in a sharp stream of air, surging like a giant dragon. With a loud rumble, it pushed away the surrounding bricks and tiles and swept towards the motionless Worker B3 with a roar. Strictly speaking, Takaya's ability wasn't a special ability, but ki. This was a power that could be controlled through cultivation, but if one didn't have talent, they couldn't even sense ki. Although it was officially classified as a special ability, Takaya and others who could use ki, like her, often called themselves immortal relics. Worker B3's mind was awakened when the wave of ki hit him. His expression was distorted for a moment because of the severe pain, but then it turned into arrogance and pride. Boom! Worker B3 was hit solidly and fell instantly. He flipped in the air, hooked his claws on the wall of the building next to him, and quickly rushed towards Guanshan. Tang Ji, who was hiding in the corner, broke the temporary synesthesia and suddenly opened his eyes. His face was full of pain. Chaotic memories kept switching in front of his eyes. One of them flashed by. It turned out to be a dark room with dozens of children sleeping in it. Experiment. Ready? Vague words mixed with a lot of noise. Chen Yunpeng's voice in the earpiece was unclear. Tangji? Tangji, are you okay? Tangji felt like his brain was being pricked by needles. He gasped for breath and said with difficulty, I'm okay, but I seem to have sensed an incredible clue. Oh no! After Takaya sent the C-class ability user flying, she saw the cunning smile on his face as he fell. She knew she had been tricked. This guy was purposely pretending to be weak so that he could escape from her attack range. Her heart sank, and she immediately chased after him. At the other end of the alley, the lizard man whose flesh had been cut open did not slow down at all. He howled as he met Guanshan face to face at an extremely fast speed. Then, he rushed out again. Guanshan didn't expect that the boss didn't target him, but went outside. Shindinghua was still waiting outside the alley. Even though the simulator had said that all scenes and items were simulated, Guanshan felt that they were indeed fake. Since it was simulated, it shouldn't hurt other people in the real world. Although the simulator would cause damage to the surrounding environment and injure Guanshan, it was all targeted at him. There was no one in those environments. That was the logic. But at this moment, Guanshan didn't care about these things. He only knew that the monster's claws were aimed at Shindinghua. The cooldown of gravity control wasn't up yet. Guanshan canceled the 50 kilograms gravity and instantly surpassed the speed of the zombie. His high-speed vision passed through the alley, the ground, and the hideous monster. He saw the slender girl's back that was still quietly waiting. He took out the boning knife, activated Butcher's heart, and chased after her with all his strength. But the zombie was 1 step faster than him. Guanshan just raised his knife, and the zombie's claws had already touched Shundinghua's back. No, Guanshan's pupils contracted, and his reason was broken. He watched the claws get closer and closer, bit by bit. Then, it passed through Shundinghua's body without any hindrance. Guanshan was stunned. There was no blood, and there was no expected tearing. The zombie's claws passed through first, and then the whole body. The monster's body and Shundinghua's figure merged, and then passed through each other. It was so smooth that it was like passing through a mold. No, this was probably passing through a mold. Guanshan blinked. The zombie landed in the distance, and even hissed at Guanshan to provoke him. It didn't see Shundinghua at all. Shundinghua covered her ears, and her thin skirt fluttered in the wind. She seemed to have heard the movement behind her and asked doubtfully, Xiao Shan? PS1. First update. Looking for recommendation votes. Looking for monthly votes. PS2. Maybe new readers don't know. I'm a professional when it comes to showing off dog food. Patting chest. Chapter 33. The alien zombie was still eyeing them covetously not far away and could launch another attack at any time. But Guanshan's extremely nervous expression gradually softened. He looked at Shun Dinghua's unharmed back, and the panic and fear that had just reached his throat, as well as the last trace of doubt, were dispelled. Yes, this was just a fake thing simulated by the simulator. It would only affect Guanshan, so how could it hurt Shun Dinghua who existed in the real world? Xiaoshan, are you okay? I seem to have heard something. Shun Dinghua asked uneasily. Her tone was very worried, but she still followed Guanshan's initial instructions and did not look back. Guanshan took a deep breath and calmed his breath that was trembling because of his excessive emotions just now. He said softly, No, it's just that someone came to cause trouble. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. Shun Dinghua nodded. Yes, I believe in Xiaoshan. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The alien zombie stuck out its tongue, and its eyes were full of the contempt and malice of a hunter. It moved 2 steps to the side, and then disappeared in an instant with a whoosh. Guanshan promised, Soon it will be fine soon. Shuman Lin shrank in the corner of the alley, and her eyes were full of horror and disbelief. What was that? She even suspected that she was so frightened that her brain was hallucinating. Shun Dinghua is obviously an ordinary person, but what happened just now? How could that psychic pass through her like air in a ghost? This is impossible. Is she fake? Or are my eyes fake? Shuman Lin covered her head and felt that her worldview was beginning to be distorted. It's impossible. He was injured by that psychic, and the surrounding buildings were also affected. Why did this happen to Shun Dinghua? No, it's impossible that Shun Dinghua didn't hear such a loud noise. In the earpiece, Gao Ye's anxious muttering voice came through. How can I fight in the alley? I can't use my ability, otherwise I'll definitely hurt them. We're evenly matched. If I warn them now, it might create an opportunity for the enemy. Guanshan's gravity manipulation had ended. He quickly retreated into the alley. Now, Guanshan somewhat understood. The alien zombie probably wanted to go to a wider area, so that it could display its speed and strength. After all, from the looks of it, this boss belonged to the extreme category with high attack speed and low HP. If it scratched him, he might die. If it was scratched, it might die. If it was trapped in the narrow terrain of the alley, it would be a dead end. Guanshan's eyes flashed. Since he couldn't get close, and his HP was low, then one of the 2 skills he had just obtained was quite suitable. Swoosh! The alien zombie's figure appeared in front of Guanshan in an instant. It roared and attacked him, its sharp claws drawing several white sonic booms. This burst of speed was too fast. Guanshan's scalp was numb. He was only able to raise the boning knife halfway before he was forced to block the attack. Clang! The boning knife and the sharp claws collided. The former instantly vibrated and buzzed. A few nicks were cut on the blade, and cracks appeared on the blade. The simulator appeared again, indicating that the weapon had a wear rate. At this time, a vertical wear bar appeared on the right side of the screen. If this bar appeared, it meant that the weapon had begun to wear out. The degree of wear would be displayed on the weapon interface, which would affect the weapon's attack power and the price in the store. If this bar fell, then the weapon would be scrapped. Guanshan was shocked. He had a very direct understanding of how high the boss attack power was. The strength of each cut was comparable to that of Spider's attack using gravity. It made him lose single-digit HP. If it cut him, he would probably die in an instant. What was more frightening was the monster's attack speed. There were countless afterimages of claws, as if they were coming from all directions. The boning knife's relatively wide blade was soon covered with nicks and claw marks, and the cracks were getting bigger and bigger. The wear bar was like a cat being targeted by an orange cat, rapidly decreasing. It was as if it would fall apart at any time. Guanshan waved the boning knife, his eyebrows twitching. He couldn't even retreat. If he diverted even a little bit of his attention, it would be easy to find a flaw. Calm down. When the 10-second cooldown is up, it will be time for me to create an opportunity. Guan Shan counted silently in his heart. 3, 2, 1. Gravity, 50 kilograms, all down. While Worker B3 was wantonly attacking, he suddenly felt that his body seemed to have doubled in weight. It was as if the gravity below had grown a hand, pulling his whole body down. His whole body sank, which naturally affected his movements and reaction speed. His claws instantly deviated from the direction, and one of his claws was embedded in the wall. His entire attack came to a halt. He suddenly had an ominous feeling in his heart. Worker B3 pulled out his claws and turned his head abruptly, only to see that Guan Shan didn't attack again. His expression was almost solemn as he stretched out his finger and pointed at the center of his forehead. Ancient blood-colored patterns in the shape of thorns spread out like ripples from where his finger touched. It quickly spread to the skin all over his body, cheeks, and the back of his hands, like entwined blood vessels. Magic Pattern Drawing, Level 1. Effect: draw one of the magic patterns in life. Protection, blessing, thorns, granting different effects of enhancement. Duration: 50 seconds, can be interrupted. Choice: thorns. Thorns consume 2% HP every second. Inflict damage equal to the target's HP. Guan Shan's current HP was 1,100. 2% was 22. He only needed about 37 seconds to directly exhaust his opponent to death. This. Worker B3's expression was filled with fear as he realized that the strange thorns had appeared on his body at the same time. Although he didn't know what the hell this was, he instinctively felt that the thorns entwining around his body were drilling into his body and would take his life. He no longer looked at Guan Shan with the cunning and arrogance of a hunter, but completely turned into a murderous gaze. He had to kill this guy to stop the spreading of these patterns. The next 37 seconds were the most difficult battle Guan Shan had ever fought since he activated the simulator. Attacks rained down on him like a storm. Other than blocking and running away in fear, there was nothing else he could do. But the skill provided by the simulator didn't disappoint. The mutated zombie's claws stopped in front of Guan Shan's eyes, and it looked like it was going to tear his head apart in the next moment. The boning knife in Guan Shan's hand had already turned into scrap metal, and it pierced through the enemy's body. The kill notification from the simulator sounded. Phew! Guan Shan finally breathed a sigh of relief and turned off the skill. The red thorns slowly disappeared under his skin and finally retracted into the space between his eyebrows and disappeared. Less than half a meter away, Shan Dinghua was still covering her ears. Xiao Shan, are you done? Guan Shan glanced at his single-digit HP and said against his will, I'm fine, but I'm not completely healed yet. I still have something to do. Close your eyes and cover them. You'll be fine after walking for a while. He still had to pick up the dropped items from before. He didn't want Shan Dinghua to see him squatting on the ground and touching the air. Shan Dinghua obediently agreed and did as she was told. Guan Shan pulled her and walked into the alley that was full of flesh and blood in his eyes. He walked in front, and Shan Dinghua covered her eyes with one hand and followed behind, until they passed by Shuman Lin. The completely translucent little girl suddenly froze and didn't dare to move at all. Shan Dinghua actually opened her fingers, revealing a pair of curved eyes, and smiled at her. In the alley that was full of flesh and blood, this smile was as bright and beautiful as a lily. Bewitching. P.S. Second update. Looking for recommendation votes. Looking for monthly votes. Chapter 34. Her hair stood on end. Shuman Lin got goosebumps from Shan Dinghua's gaze. She saw me. She can definitely see me. Shuman Lin's mind was filled with this thought. She was completely dumbfounded. This was definitely not an illusion. At such a close distance, she could clearly see that gaze. And she was sure that Shan Dinghua did it on purpose. She clearly did everything Guan Shan said before. But now that he asked her to close her eyes, she spread her fingers and smiled at Shuman Lin. She even deliberately chose a blind spot that Guan Shan couldn't see. In other words, not only could she see Shuman Lin in her invisible state, but Shan Dinghua also saw the whole process of Guan Shan's battle just now, and the horrible and bloody scene in the alley. She was simply pretending that she didn't notice anything. And obviously, the reason why the psychic couldn't notice or touch Shindinghua was because of her. It had nothing to do with Guan Shan's unknown ability. As long as Shuman Lin thought about how she even put her head between the two of them to look at the document on the phone, she could almost imagine how terrifying Shun Dinghua's gaze must have been when she looked at her with a smile. What is this, a warning? Shuman Lin's back was covered in cold sweat. She didn't dare to move. She stiffly looked at Shun Dinghua's back as she left with Guan Shan. Shun Dinghua covered her eyes again and returned to her obedient appearance. She was still asking Guan Shan in a low voice what had happened. Her tone was nervous and confused. Coupled with her soft voice, it could arouse people's desire to protect her. Guan Shan naturally comforted her softly as usual, but from time to time, he squatted down and rummaged among the broken corpses. He pulled out some things that were wrapped in blood and couldn't be seen clearly. Shuman Lin looked at the two people and only felt that she didn't fit in. She couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Maybe there's nothing wrong with them. Am I the one with the problem? What happened just now? Worker B3's entire body directly went through Shindinghua. Galya's voice came from the earpiece. Her usually calm tone was a little shocked. After all, anyone who saw that scene would find it unbelievable and associate it with things like ghosts. But they all knew that it was impossible. They had investigated all the people who were related to Guan Shan, especially Shun Dinghua, who was very close to him. She was indeed a living person. Chen Yinpeng doubted his life. I saw it too. Is that also Guan Shan's ability? Or is Shun Dinghua actually a ghost? He shuddered and said, speaking of which, this is the first time we witnessed a battle between Guan Shan and a C-class ability user, right? This guy is too scary. From the time he encountered Worker B3 to the time he killed it, it added up to a minute, and it seems that he didn't have a chance to fight back at all. Worker B3 suddenly died. Chen Yunpeng turned to ask Shuman Lin, Little Invisible, did you see what he did at that time? How'd he do it? Little Invisible was a nickname given to Shuman Lin by people who knew her. Because Shuman Lin often cooperated with the combatants, the people in the first team were actually very familiar with her. It had to be said that it was very appropriate. Tang Ji was still immersed in the headache caused by the ability. He looked confused and said, What are you talking about? Shuman Lin felt a little comforted in her heart. Look, she wasn't the only one who was scared. The world was still normal. It's Shun Dinghua's problem. Guan Shan didn't seem to be using an ability at that time, but something like a curse. I'll write the details in the report. Shuman Lin said with certainty. When she stood up, she found that her legs were a little numb from squatting and even a little trembling. But the most important thing should be to clean up the scene first, right? She looked up and saw that Gao Ye's figure had already appeared on the roof above. Gao Ye looked down at the messy scene in the alley. In addition to feeling the cruelty of Guan Shan's methods, she also felt a headache. Clean up the scene. These Killer Bee members were all unforgivable scum. No matter how ugly their deaths were, it wasn't enough to pity them. But this kind of complicated battle scene wasn't easy to deal with. They could only use optical invisibility cloths to cover it up and wait for the logistics team to arrive. Chun Yunpeng couldn't help but say, We seem to have wiped his ass again. Why did Min'er call us here? He killed them all by himself. He doesn't need any protection at all. They were the first team of the Taiyan formation. Why did it suddenly feel like they were the exclusive logistics team? Gao Yi sheathed her sword. Whether he needs it or not is his ability. Whether we come or not is our responsibility. She said seriously, the Killer Bees have already targeted him, so we have to protect him. Gao Yi looked at the house that belonged to Zhao Hong's family not far away. Moreover, this time he brought us the clue. Zhao Hong and his wife were just one of the Killer Bees' many experimental subjects. The Killer Bees' goal was very clear. Zhao Hong's family didn't belong to the group of people who could awaken abilities, so they didn't send too many people to pay attention to them. Who would have thought that the Killer Bees would take a roundabout route? Then, he returned to this place and secretly used their child as a test subject. Furthermore, it was a success. The Killer Bees came at the right time. It was very likely that they discovered Guan Shan's arrival. In order to prevent him from being exposed, they wanted to transfer the experimental subject away. Tang Ji appeared out of nowhere. He rubbed his head and said with a serious expression, "I just sensed Killer Bee 3's past memories. The Killer Bees kidnapped a large number of children and gathered them in a certain place. They probably want to use them for a large number of experiments." He was a little annoyed. "But I can't sense where exactly they are." Gao Yi sheathed her sword and looked at Guan Shan's departing figure. Her eyes flashed. Suddenly, she said, "You guys wait. Since Guan Shan attracted us here by pretending to be a thief, he must know something." As she spoke, she jumped down from the roof and walked towards Guan Shan. Ah! Shuman Lin was stunned. She didn't expect Gao Yi to be so reckless. But it was too late to reach out her hand now. Countdown. 0000. The timer for the simulator to destroy the scenario ended, and Guan Shan subconsciously turned back to look. The light in the alley was dim, but the corpses and filth from before had all disappeared. No matter how he looked at it, it was just a normal alley. All the doubts in Guan Shan's heart disappeared. His mood lightened. Yes, it was all fake. There was no need to think too much about it. The simulator's notifications started to flood the screen. Game simulation completed. Zombie siege. Final boss killed. 1-to-1 rating. Elite monster killed. 33 rating. Normal monster killed. 77 rating. Acquired items. High-speed chainsaw X1. Greater healing potion X13. Trioctahedron X1. Lockbox X1. Key to a box X1. Rating. Perfect. All acquired items can be kept. Acquired reward. Game coins X6000. Skill points X2. Unlocked achievement. Open the door. Send warmth. Use the crowbar to kill 10 or more enemies. Achievement reward. Burning magazine. Stackable. X1. All rewards have been sent to the inventory. Please check. Calculation complete. Please wait patiently for the next simulation to start. Thank goodness the new healing potion dropped. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll have to go to the hospital again. The difficulty of this simulation is getting higher and higher. It seems like solving the breakthrough mission is imminent. Guan Shan sighed, but then he saw a familiar girl walk over. He paused for a moment. "You're Xia Lei's relative?" Gao Yi paused and nodded expressionlessly. Then she asked, "Guan Shan, do you know about Zhao Hong?" PS1. First update, please recommend me. Please vote. PS2. Thank you 20170515142328843 for your tips. Chapter 35. Guan Shan was stunned. Zhao Hong's case. Zhao Hong's men were all dead. What else could there be? Naturally, there was no news about the murderer or the truth. Guan Shan sized up the young girl in front of him again. He saw that although there was some probing in her eyes, there was more certainty. It was as if she was confident that he knew something. And Guan Shan had the documents from Li Jiying, so he knew more than the average person. How did this girl know? Although the Zhao couple's murder case had just ended, there was very little news about it on the internet. The attention was only for a while, and recently, the popularity of the case had died down, and most people wouldn't pay much attention to Zhao Hong's home address. The people who came to harass Zhao Hong's mother were basically reporters. Guan Shan had a thought. Wait, Xia Lei's Tin Formation is her relative. Although I don't know what kind of department the Tin Formation is, she's a police officer. She might have learned something from Xia Lei. She probably knows that I'm a reporter. Today, she saw me in front of Zhao Hong's house, so she made such a guess. Guan Shan instantly straightened out his logic and suddenly understood. At the same time, he was puzzled. Why did this girl come to ask about Zhao Hong? With her age and family background, could it be she was particularly curious about unsolved cases and wanted to investigate them herself or test her courage? Guan Shan thought back to when Xia Lei said that he had fished her out of a bar. This meant that this girl wasn't a well-behaved person. She should be a bit rebellious. Maybe that was true. There's no other possibility, right? Guan Shan nodded in his heart. He confirmed his guess and treated her as a rebellious adolescent girl who was bursting with curiosity. So he said helplessly and with some amusement, "I do know, but why should I tell you?" A direct response. This guy really knew. Gao Yi narrowed her eyes. Guanshan's half-smile and his condescending expression made her even more certain that this guy must know all the arrangements and plans of the killer bees. In that case, Guanshan must have entered the restaurant on purpose. In order to kill Zhao Hong and his wife, he pretended to be a prey and let their guard down. He pretended to be unaware and went in to kill them in a high-profile manner. It was the same on the bus. And now, he had put on a show to lure them over, and then told them as if he was giving them charity by telling them that there were hidden clues that they had not noticed. The first time could be a coincidence, the second time could be a coincidence, but the third time was a meticulous plan. Takaya could understand what her teacher, Xiaolei, was thinking. Xiaolei preferred to use gentle probing methods. He must have felt that although Guanshan was mysterious and cruel, his psychological assessment was safe, which meant that he was within the scope of negotiation. He hoped that they could cooperate peacefully. However, this was equivalent to handing over the initiative to the other side, and Guanshan's attitude towards matters related to superpowers was so indifferent that he was simply helping the tyrant do evil. On the contrary, Gao Yi felt that Guanshan didn't bother to hide his thoughts when taking action. What was Guanshan's method of luring them over? He directly came over to investigate the cause of Zhao Hong's death. But who killed Zhao Hong? Wasn't it Guanshan? He was just short of telling them, "There's something wrong with what I'm doing. Hurry up and investigate." Then, as soon as they came over, the killer bees couldn't hold back and jumped out one by one to be slaughtered by Guanshan. Instead, it was like Jiang Taigong fishing for those who were willing to take the bait. No matter how many of them came, he would kill them all. At this moment, seeing Guanshan's confident reaction, Gao Yi felt that her guess was correct. It wasn't that this person couldn't communicate, but that he would only tell you what he wanted to tell you. Gao Yi raised her head and asked in return, "Why can't you tell me?" Guanshan raised his eyebrows and smiled. "Children should focus on their studies. Don't worry about these things. If something happens, I won't be the one to feel bad. Also, don't answer a question with a question." "I'm not." Gao Yi frowned and wanted to say something, but at this moment Guanshan just went through such a fierce battle. He just wanted to rest and study the breakthrough mission. He sighed and said, "Don't waste your energy. I won't reveal what I know for free. You might as well ask your relative who is a police officer." Guanshan spread his hands. "I'm just a small reporter. How can I compare to the efficiency of the public security system, right?" He said sincerely, "You see, I came here and didn't find any clues, but the police uncles might even know who the murderer is. So, instead of fooling around, it's better to wait for the news." Shun Dingwan nodded and said, "Yes, little friend, we're going to rest first. We've been walking for half a day, and we still have things to do in the afternoon." Gao Yi only felt that Guanshan was mocking them. They were the ones who didn't find any clues, and the murderer was right in front of them. Was he trying to say that they shouldn't try to get information from him anymore? Gao Yi understood that this was an obvious rejection, but the words "wait for the news" seemed to be hinting that he would do something later. "Forget it. They couldn't force it," Gao Yi said unwillingly. "I'll come again." Guanshan shrugged and said, "Well, if you insist on playing detective, the result will be the same anyway. But, little detective, I don't even know your name. Why are you acting like we're close?" Gao Yi said seriously, "Gao Yi." Gao as in noble, and Yi as in leaf. Gao Yi watched Guanshan leave, still a little discouraged. Yes, he would answer the questions, but Guanshan still had a stubborn look on his face, the same attitude he had towards Xia Lei in the hospital. What a difficult guy to deal with. "Captain, the logistics team is here. Let's go first," Chen Yunpeng said. "Instructor Xia asked us to go over and review the game. We need to study the new ability that Guanshan displayed. Also, the worker bee revealed several experimental locations where the killer bee was used. It's best that we investigate them as soon as possible." Gao Yi nodded and took a deep breath. She understood that it was more important to solve the current situation. As for Mount Guan, they could approach it later. Tang Ji wailed. "That worker bee's thinking was too chaotic. I have to rest for 3 days because of a work injury." Gao Yi was walking when she suddenly froze. She turned around and grabbed Tang Ji. "Say that again." Tang Ji said timidly, "I mean, 3 hours of rest." Gao Yi shook her head, her eyes sharp. No. What did you see when you synced? Try to recall carefully. Other than children, was there anything related to learning? Tang Ji was shocked and tried hard to recall. No, no, he suddenly froze. No, I think there was... In that dark room, there was chalk dust on the floor. P.S. Second update. Hands on hips, looking for recommendation votes. Looking for monthly votes. Chapter 36. Tang Ji's words stunned Chen Yunpeng. What chalk? Tang Ji said excitedly. There's chalk dust on the ground. And it's not just a little bit. It's all at the corner of the wall and the ground. There's only one kind of place where this would happen. Cao Yi said thoughtfully, is it a classroom? Chen Yunpeng also reacted and came to a sudden realization. Chalk dust would only accumulate in the corner if someone used chalk to write on the board for a long time. Tang Ji was excited and wanted to say something, but he frowned and shook his head. He hesitated and said, no, that place is very narrow. The height is at most 5 meters. In the image I sensed, worker B3 bent down to enter. The moment he entered, his first thought was it smells bad. He gestured. Moreover, there's a slit of light above, and the ground isn't paved with tiles, but with mud. Cao Yi frowned and was a little confused. This description really didn't look like a classroom, but there was chalk dust in the corner. The three of them looked at each other, somewhat at a loss. At this moment, Xia Lei's voice suddenly came from the earpiece. It's a pigsty. The three of them. Chen Yunpeng was dumbfounded and said in surprise, a pigsty? But why would there be chalk dust in a pigsty? Xia Lei explained, some rural houses will leave the bottom floor empty and use the slit of that floor to raise pigs while people live in the house. The light that Tang Ji saw came from the slit of the wooden floor on the upper floor. If there's chalk dust, it means that the upper floor is used as a classroom. The chalk dust leaked down from the slit above, which is similar to the position inside the classroom. He concluded, therefore, what Tang Ji sensed should be a pigsty under a poor rural school. Chen Yunpeng suddenly understood. So that's how it is. Minor Xia is the most experienced. No wonder worker B3 felt that the smell was bad. Cao Yi muttered, there shouldn't be many rural villages that are poor to this extent now, right? Send people to investigate one by one. Maybe we can find it. Tang Ji smiled bitterly. But we only know that it's under a rural school. It's still like looking for a needle in a haystack. Cao Yi shook her head. At least it's now the Mediterranean Sea and not the Pacific Ocean. Tang Ji and Chen Yunpeng looked at each other and saw hope in each other's eyes. The killer bees had been secretly experimenting with sublimation sugar for at least a year, and the Tan Formation had been investigating. However, the other parties' whereabouts were hidden and they were scattered far and wide. Usually, after giving the sublimation sugar to the experimental subject, they would immediately retreat. They were extremely cautious and would never return a second time like this. The subjects of the sublimation sugar would often cause trouble for them and slow down their investigations. The Tan Formation could only be dealt with one by one. It was not until Guanshan's appearance that the killer bees were completely overturned and a few experimental sites were exposed. Tang Ji was in high spirits. Great. Let the logistics department investigate while we go to the experimental sites. This time, we must catch all the killer bees in one fell swoop. Chen Yunpeng asked curiously, Captain, how did you know that it has something to do with learning? Gao Yi's expression was serious. Guanshan told me. Chen Yunpeng was shocked. Holy shit, he really knows where the killer bees are? Gao Yi nodded and was very sure. When she asked why he couldn't tell her, Guanshan's answer was that children should focus on their studies and that she shouldn't answer a question with a question. Well, don't answer a question with a question. However, when Guanshan started to answer Gao Yi's question, do you know about Zhao Hong? He used a question, why should I tell you? This person shouldn't play dumb with a child. Therefore, what he meant was to eliminate all the questions in the middle, and what was left was the answer to the question. Children should focus on their studies. Wasn't he talking about the tied-up children and the surrounding environment? Gao Yi thought to herself, this guy said that he wouldn't reveal what he knew for free, but in the end, he still did it. Sundara. Guanshan and Shun Dinghua rested for a while. and in the afternoon, they went to the apartment where the Nail family lived to take a look. The apartment had a total of 10 floors, and the Nail family lived on the 7th floor, room 704. The two walked in the corridor, and even the sound of their footsteps was particularly clear, and there was even a faint echo. Guanshan held the railing and looked down. The apartment was quite large, and it was a fully enclosed structure. In the middle of the courtyard, there were many fitness facilities commonly seen in parks, but they were now a little rusty. The door was locked, and the faded spring festival couplets were blown by the wind. The apartment, which was almost empty, looked a little deserted. Fortunately, it's broad daylight. Otherwise, it would be a little scary. Guanshan was about to make a joke when his heart suddenly skipped a beat. This scene was too suitable. The horror game simulator wouldn't start again, right? Shin Dinghua blinked and leaned over, tilting her head and saying, "Xiaoshan, you seem a little nervous. Are you scared?" She opened her arms and said righteously, "If you're scared, hug me tightly." Shin Dinghua looked expectant. Wasn't this role reversed? Guanshan's mouth twitched, and he shook his head. "No, we're on the 7th floor." Guanshan pointed to the building number on the wall in front of him and walked up quickly. He comforted himself. If it wanted to start, it would have started long ago. There was no response now, so it should mean that it wouldn't start. 704? It's here. Guanshan looked at the closed door in front of him and tentatively knocked on the door. There was no response from the door. Guanshan knocked a few more times, and all kinds of shouting were useless. Well, it seems that this Nail family is really troublesome. I'm not afraid of scolding, but I'm afraid of no response. Guanshan sighed and said, "Let's go." Shin Dinghua comforted him. "There's no rush. Let's think of another way." Guanshan nodded. "I'm going to start with Qin Diguang's wife and daughter." Shin Dinghua took 2 steps forward with her hand behind her back and said cheerfully, "By the way, Xiaoshan, I heard that a lot of people have come here to test their courage. It's said that it's very scary here at night. People just love to join in the fun." Guanshan laughed. I was about to say something when he suddenly felt something cold on his neck, as if some liquid had dripped on it. He was stunned and wiped it with his hand. Guanshan rubbed his fingers and felt that it was a little slippery. He looked up at the ceiling of the corridor and was a little confused. Oil? He narrowed his eyes and looked carefully for a long time, but he didn't see any traces of water. Guanshan frowned. Before he left, he subconsciously looked at the closed door again, but found that there was an eye in the peephole on the door, staring at him. Guanshan's hair stood on end, and he took a few steps back. He was still in shock and wanted to call Shin Dinghua, but found that the eye had disappeared, leaving only a dark hole. Shin Dinghua looked back and asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" Guanshan twitched the corner of his mouth. "No, nothing. Was it Qin Diguang?" When he knocked on the door, Qin Diguang couldn't have been staring at him like that. Shin Dinghua trotted over and pulled the stiff Guanshan away, urging him, "Let's go. I know a very delicious restaurant nearby. Let's go there for dinner and then go home." Guanshan switched to the simulator interface, and for the first time, hoped that the simulator would quickly say that the scene scan was completed, but unfortunately, the simulator didn't do anything this time. PS1. First update. Begging for recommendation votes. Begging for monthly votes. PS2. Thank you for Duan Use Reward. Chapter 37. After saying goodbye to Shin Dinghua at the door, Guanshan went home and took a shower. It was almost autumn, and the weather was still a little hot. After running one round outside, he was sweating. Luckily, after leveling up, my physique has greatly improved. Running around like this is much easier than before, and I only sweat a little. After Guanshan finished washing up, he looked at himself in the mirror. He had a handsome face, and his eyes were clear. When he smiled, he had a scholarly gentleness, and there was a natural sense of intimacy. After all, a newspaper reporter was still a reporter, and there was a requirement for an invisible appearance. Although they usually did not appear on camera, they still needed to maintain their image during interviews. Otherwise, if people did not want to talk to you, how could they understand the situation? But it seems that the level of the simulator can be increased passively. It will only increase my strength and speed, and it will not change my body. Guanshan pinched his arm. It felt no different from before, and there were no particularly obvious muscles. However, he had tried it before. He could now easily crush the marble in the yard with his bare hands. In other words, the difficulty of crushing a human skull was about the same. This level of strength should be stronger than the chef, but it is still weaker than the mutated zombie today. Guanshan suddenly narrowed his eyes and reached out to touch his chest on the mirror. There was a faint scarlet heart shape there. Blood vessels spread out from the center, and there were 3 relatively thick blood vessels. However, 2 of them had dried up, and only one was still pumping blood. Butcher's heart. This is a total of 3 uses, and I have already used 2. Does this mean that there is only 1 left? Guanshan immediately thought that this was an accessory that he wore. This should be a form of reminder that only I can see, right? Guanshan shook his head, came out of the bathroom, and went downstairs to make himself a cup of tea. He sat in the living room and turned on the TV to see what could be used in the simulation this time. Flesh entanglement parasite has been completely used up, but fortunately, I've got 13 strong healing potions from the elite zombies and the boss. Guanshan felt that what he needed the most was healing potions. However, everyone knew that horror game card resources were definitely very ruthless. Otherwise, how could he create a sense of urgency for you? However, although this healing potion sounded serious, its effect were not serious at all. Greater Healing Potion effect instantly restores 50% HP and reduces maximum HP by 5 points. Description: a product of a certain biochemical laboratory belonging to a large organization. The side effects were concealed when it was sold. The price of each bottle is 230,000 yuan. Exchanging 5 points for 50% of his HP. I'm afraid only the person involved will know if this trade is a loss or not. Guanshan shook a bottle of fluorescent purple medicine in his hand. But for Guanshan, he had no choice. In fact, he should have picked up 15 bottles, but after the dungeon ended, he only had a single-digit HP left. He could only drink 2 bottles on the spot to replenish his HP. Maximum HP minus 10. Therefore, his maximum HP was now 990. After including the passive effect, he had 1089 HP. This difference of 11 points might not seem like much, but in reality, it could be the difference between life and death. It's even more dangerous now. Guanshan sighed and immediately added 2 skill points to Carrion Pile and Gravity Control. The level 2 Carrion Pile increased his HP by 15%. His total HP had reached 1138. 5, which was about 40 points higher than his original HP. As for the level 2 Gravity Manipulation, the range expanded from 20 meters to 50 meters, and 50 kilograms became 100 kilograms. The duration and cooldown did not change. Guanshan's eyes lit up. If it's 100 kilograms, some of the lighter monsters can even try to fall to their deaths. It won't be so difficult to face group attacks. However, HP and skills were only one aspect. The more serious problem was that the weapons in his hands were gradually becoming weaker. The boning knife was directly scrapped. However, the scrapped boning knife was sold to the shop for 50 game coins. It could be considered as a recycling of scrap. Guanshan calculated his current weapons. If I apply the poison ointment to the high-speed chainsaw, it can add a poison debuff. 1% HP per second. It's better than nothing. He took out the Glock 17 and a translucent magazine with flame patterns on it. What's important is the incendiary magazine that was rewarded by the achievement. Guanshan directly slapped the magazine into the pistol. The information directly became Glock 17, burning, magazine capacity, unlimited attack power, 50 plus 150. If the enemy is burning, 7 HP will continue to be reduced every second. Description: this is not a small pistol that can be seen everywhere. After modification, the bullet will explode the moment it hits the target. Boom, boom, boom. On top of the basic 50 points of damage, there was an additional 150 points of explosion damage and a burning debuff. This time, even if it couldn't hit the head, the power of this gun was quite impressive. Guanshan was very satisfied with the increase in the power of the weapon. Most importantly, The two debuffs, burning and poison, stacked together, could cause a lot of damage to the enemy. As for the remaining 3 items, they were a little strange. Guanshan took out the items from his backpack. They were trioctahedron, lockbox, and key to a certain box. The key and the box didn't look special. Guanshan tested them and found that they were indeed a set. Crack! The box opened. The structure inside looked like a bracket, as if it was holding something up. Stunned for a moment, Guanshan turned to look at the cubic hedron in his hand. This shape seems to fit perfectly. He placed a strange, circular crystal made of countless facets on the bracket, and it actually fit perfectly. Guanshan was puzzled. Is this box used to hold this ball? But why didn't you just put it in the box? Why did you lock the box instead? He subconsciously closed the lid, and a message appeared in front of his eyes. Cubic hedron. Effect. If sealed in a dark place, it will summon the night demon. It will thirst for blood before it can rest in peace. Description. I summon you from the Blue Mountains. The lid of the box fell down. F***CK. This is it? Wang Yong looked at the house in front of him. It was obviously an old house, and there was even an osmanthus tree in the yard. A teenager with a tattoo on the back of his hand next to him replied, "Yes, we followed him all the way here. This guy was trying to get close to that old woman during the day." Another said, "I've seen this guy before. He's a reporter from a nearby newspaper." A reporter? How dare he come here? Didn't we warn him? Wang Yong himself didn't look old, but at this moment, he revealed a strange smile that didn't match his age. He's unlucky to have such a beautiful girlfriend. Let's have some fun tonight. The teenagers who followed him were even more excited. Why don't we tie him up like we did with Xiao Hong and Fong Minmin? Wang Yong glanced at them. Don't look for trouble. We'll deal with them one by one. It won't be good if we make too much noise. Those people won't come to help us now. Let's go. He took the first step and directly climbed over the wall into Guanshan's house. PS1. Thank you RT by AO for the tip. Looking for recommendation votes. Looking for monthly votes. PS2. Fix the previous HP bug. Finally, I'm not stepping on a deadline today. Good God. Chapter 38. After Wang Yong climbed over the wall, the rest of the youths also followed him. Wang Yong looked around the entire yard and found that the osmanthus tree was planted in a flower bed. The surrounding tables were also filled with various potted plants. It was lush and full of vitality. It's quite lively, but unfortunately, it won't live long. Wang Yong smiled and said, Jing, Tianbin, you two go and see what that guy is doing. The two youths who spoke first immediately nodded and quietly walked to the window. They saw Guanshan sitting in the living room and fiddling with something. It's on the first floor. Easy. The two looked at each other and tacitly left one person to continue watching while the other turned back to tell Wang Yong. According to his previous habit, Jing continued to pay attention to Guanshan's movements. Tianbin turned his head and excitedly prepared to tell his boss that they could take action. But from the corner of his eye, he suddenly saw that the lights in the villa next door were on. He was stunned. Impossible. When they came over, they had already observed that the next door had already turned off the lights and gone to sleep. So they decided to deal with them one by one. Tianbin was about to remind the others when the next moment, a human figure was suddenly cast on the lit window. The curtains were vague and distorted the shadow, but it was obviously the outline of a girl's figure. She put her hand on the window and stood there motionless, as if she had been looking here all along. Was it that reporter's girlfriend? She saw it all. Tianbin's scalp exploded and a chill ran down his spine. He was so scared that he staggered and hurriedly ran to Wang Yong. He pointed in the direction of the window and said, "Brother Wang, that girl must have seen it all. What should we do?" Wang Yong tilted his head and frowned impatiently. "There's nothing. Are your eyes playing tricks on you?" Tianbin was stunned. He turned his head and looked in the direction of his finger. But he could only see that in the darkness, the villa was still quiet. There was no sign of lights at all. There was no light and no shadow. He murmured in disbelief. How could it be? The youths mocked. Tianbin, why are you so scared? Did you run into a ghost? I think he's too nervous. He's so scared that he's hallucinating. He was like this last time as well. I had to shout at him several times before he dared to make a move. If he's really afraid, then don't come over. Tian Bin was so angry that his face turned red, but he was sure that it wasn't an illusion. That feeling of palpitations still lingered, and he couldn't refute. Wang Yong saw that he was speechless for a long time, clicked his tongue, and said, "Trash. You stay at the back and don't ruin things." Tian Bin stuttered, "Yes, yes." Wang Yong asked him about the reporter's situation, and Tian Bin answered truthfully. The youths then relaxed and walked towards the door with their arms around each other's shoulders. They were obviously habitual offenders. One of them was on the lookout, while the other picked the lock. They were very skilled and quick. Finally, after a slight click, the door was unlocked. The moment he opened the door, Wang Yong's brain began to reflexively become excited. He could not help but think of that night 2 months ago. A strange person, whose face they couldn't even remember, had displayed inhuman strength in front of them. Then he told them that as long as they helped him do one thing, they could also obtain such strength. At first, they were nervous and panicked, but after hearing what he wanted them to do, Wang Yong was first stunned, then he couldn't help but become excited. Fang Minmin, that woman was really beautiful. Everyone around here knew that she was beautiful. It was said that she was a top student who graduated from a famous university, but she worked as a waiter in that restaurant. Who knew how many people came to eat because of the way she bent over when she wiped the table? But Zhao Hong, that big guy, had an amazing deterrent force, which made many people only dare to think about it in their hearts. They really didn't know where this chef's good fortune came from. But now, this fortune belonged to them. That person promised that as long as they made a move, he would take care of the rest. So they also did the same. They brought knives and ropes and broke into Zhao Hong's small restaurant. They quietly went to the bedroom on the second floor, quietly gagged the sleeping Fang Minmin, and quietly dragged her to the ground. They restrained her struggle and surrounded her under her desperate eyes. Halfway through, Zhao Hong woke up. That gaze, TSK, was really scary. Wang Yong had to admit that he was indeed frightened for a moment. But then, Zhao Hong was trapped by an invisible force and couldn't move. He was like a dead fish. He could only stare at them with bloodshot eyes, unable to do anything. The teenagers looked at each other and revealed a crazy and twisted smile. For the whole night, they used all kinds of methods and then quietly left. Everything was calm. That person really did as promised. He gave him something that looked like candy and gave him extraordinary power. After that, Zhao Hong and his wife disappeared and their bodies were found. No one noticed that this matter had anything to do with them. It seemed that this case was suppressed by someone. Those who came to inquire about the news were all reporters from third-rate tabloids. They gave up after a little warning. If this goes on, everything will fade away sooner or later. But this feeling of controlling someone's life and death and will, I really don't want to give up. You can only blame yourself for wanting to investigate this matter. Wang Yong smiled confidently. His white teeth and naked eyes made him look inhuman. The door was suddenly pushed open. The ferocious teenagers swarmed in like a pack of wolves pouncing on their prey. What kind of expression did the reporter have? Surprise? Fear? Fear? Would he beg for mercy? Would he regret it? Would he despair? Just imagining that scene was enough to make their brains secrete large amounts of dopamine. They couldn't help but smile. However, they would never have dreamed that the scene behind the door had nothing to do with any of this. Entrenched in the middle of the living room, under the light, was a pitch-black behemoth. It was like an amalgamation of shadows, the manifestation of nightmares. This behemoth held up the ceiling and absorbed all the light around it. It didn't have a face, but there were two sharp horns on its head. Two wings hung down from its back. It was half squatting there. Its slender body and claws were full of sharp bones. Guan Shan, on the other hand, had his back to the monster as he closed the lid of a strange box. Crack! The monster raised its claws and seemed to be about to attack Guan Shan. Boom! The sound of the door opening and footsteps sounded. The monster turned its face. Wang Yong and the teenagers who had broken and froze in place. The smiles on their faces also froze. Swoosh! The pitch-black monster suddenly spread its wings and elongated its face. It seemed to be letting out a scream that humans couldn't hear. Save! The shadow came crashing down like a tsunami, engulfing these humans into its body and crushing all their bones and flesh. It also swallowed all the cries of fear and despair. The moment the box closed, Guanshan was scared out of his wits. What a scam. If a god is sealed in a dark place, it will summon the boogeyman. Such a big box that fits perfectly. Anyone will want to try putting it in, right? Aren't sealed things usually summoned when they're opened? Why is it the other way around when it comes to you? Guanshan cursed in his heart and opened the box again in a flurry. Phew! Before he could breathe a sigh of relief, he heard a noise behind him. The most obvious was the sound of the door opening. Who is it? Guanshan jumped and turned his head abruptly. However, he only saw the open door and a dazed teenager standing at the door. Other than that, it was empty. Tianbin trembled. He was completely scared out of his wits by Guanshan's shout. His legs went soft, and he knelt on the ground with a bang. He kowtowed to him desperately. Forgive me, I was wrong. I won't dare to do it again. It's all our fault. Don't kill me. Please don't. Guanshan, ? PS1. First update. Looking for recommendation votes. Looking for monthly votes. PS2. Thank you for Bai Chinkong's tip. Chapter 39. What kind of experience would it be to suddenly see a stranger break into your house in the middle of the night, then kneel down and beg for mercy? Guanshan's expression at the moment could only be described as an emoticon pack. Black man ? JPG's first reaction was, of course, that there must be a trap. It can't be a badger game, right? When I go over, he will faint directly, and then he will extort a sum of money from me. Guanshan looked at the young man who kept kowtowing to him with a dumbfounded expression and guessed in his heart. He put away the box and the trioctahedron. He thought to himself, fortunately, I opened it quickly and didn't really summon anything. But this guy doesn't look like he's acting, and no one jumped out to cooperate. Tianbin used so much force that a bruise appeared on his head, and some traces of blood appeared. Forget it. This kind of inexplicable situation. Let's leave it to the police. To be safe, Guanshan took out his phone and prepared to record a video first and then call the police. He wanted to prove that he really didn't force this. Tianbin probably kowtowed too hard and suddenly fainted. He stopped and shook his head. Guanshan, who turned on the camera, saw his face clearly. Guanshan frowned. Wait, this person, he looks a bit familiar? His memory wasn't to the point where he could forget after seeing it, and he immediately remembered where he saw this young man. It was in the photo attached to the document. Although it was a bit blurry, because the person in front of him was standing at the back, half of his face was captured. Now that the person was in front of him, how could he not recognize him? Guanshan was still thinking about where to find the person in the photo during the day, but he didn't expect this person to come directly to his door. Combined with the strange situation of this guy suddenly running to his house and kneeling to beg for mercy, Zhao Hong's case was most likely related to them. He was afraid that his investigation had startled them. Guanshan turned on the recording function of his phone, took 2 steps forward, grabbed Tianbin's collar, and lifted him up, stopping him from continuing to kowtow. He asked in a deep voice, "You were in the group of people who went to Zhao Hong's house? What are you doing in my house?" Tianbin saw with his own eyes that his companions were all crushed by the terrifying pitch-black monster. Those distorted, terrified, and despairing faces were still vivid in his mind. He had long been scared silly. How could he not dare to speak? He was just short of mentioning his 8 generations of ancestors. He immediately nodded and said with a trembling voice, Yes, it was all done by us. That person said that he would back us up, so Brother Wong led us to do it. It's the same today. Because you and that old woman were asking for information, Brother Wong decided to break in and teach you a lesson. And in your girlfriend, you? Guanshan narrowed his eyes and interrupted Tianbin's words. He dragged him to check the door lock of his house. Sure enough, there were traces of damage. Where are the others? Didn't the others get eaten by that monster? Why is this person asking the obvious? No, that's not right. There's someone else. Tianbin suddenly came to his senses. He pointed to the outside and gulped. There's still someone on the lookout outside. Guanshan was amused. It turned out that this was an organized crime. They even assigned jobs, right? Guanshan dragged Tianbin out and found a lock-picking tool, a bundle of rope, and even a knife by the door. His expression changed immediately. This was not a small lesson. They were probably going to do it for real. If he did not get the simulator, and this guy was not possessed for some reason, he would really be in danger. Guanshan tied Tianbin up with the rope and called the police first. After asking for directions, he walked into the yard and opened the door of his house. Sure enough, he saw a figure looking left and right outside the wall. This person pretended to be natural, looking at his phone as if he was waiting for someone. When he heard the door open, he walked over with a smile. How did it end so quickly? Did you kill someone? When he saw Guanshan's face clearly, his expression changed drastically, and he ran. Guanshan chuckled and did not chase. Instead, he activated gravity control. The man only felt his body suddenly become several times heavier. His body that was running with all his might suddenly couldn't move his legs. However, this feeling only lasted for a moment. He didn't have time to adapt before he fell heavily onto the cement road. Bam! He fell face first onto the ground, landing solidly on the ground. Before the person could react, he felt an invisible force pulling him back. Then, a hand grabbed the back of his neck and threw him away. The person rolled twice and bumped into Tianbin. In the intense pain all over his body, he thought he had tripped on a rock. He finally understood the situation in a daze and immediately shouted, "Help! Murder!" Guanshan moved a stool over. When he heard the person shout, he could not help but laugh. Guanshan shook the person's phone in his hand. The chat interface was still lit up. Lu Ming, right? Who wants to kill who? You could talk to the police about it. Lu Ming's face turned pale. On the screen was a conversation between him and Wang Yong. He said stubbornly, "What can this prove?" Lu Ming was full of confidence. He had just observed that only the two of them were caught. Wang Yong and the rest must have other plans. They would be back later to let this reporter experience what it meant to beg for death. At this moment, he felt someone tugging at his clothes. He turned his head and saw Tianbin desperately grabbing him with his fingers. Tianbin's eyes were filled with pleading and fear. Lu Ming did not understand why Tianbin was so cowardly. He looked down and realized that Tianbin was wearing the rope they brought. Beside him, there was a lock-picking tool. This meant that Wang Yong and the rest were not hiding, but had already taken action. But where were they? Lu Ming was stunned. The door that was pried open was very bright, and there was not a single person in sight. Even when the police arrived, Wang Yong and the rest did not appear. Lu Ming's uneasiness reached its peak. While Guanshan was talking to the police, he quickly asked Tianbin, "What happened? Where's Wang Yong? Where are they?" Tianbin's face was ashen. He looked into the house with empty eyes. "They're there. Can't you see? Hee hee. They went in and were eaten. Ha ha." Lu Ming felt a chill down his spine, but he naturally did not believe such ridiculous words. He scolded, "Are you crazy?" The police's voice was heard. "Mr. Guan, thank you for the clues you provided. Zhao Han's case has finally made progress. These two people will be the main suspects." Lu Ming finally panicked. He did not want to be the scapegoat. He did not care if he would reveal the existence of others. He shouted, "He killed someone. He killed them. More than 10 of us came together. Now, only the 2 of us are left. He must have killed them. He must have hidden the bodies." Guanshan spread his hands helplessly. Yes. I killed them and buried them without leaving any traces. I even called the police." He sighed. "Mr. Policeman, if it's possible, should we treat his brain?" The police laughed. "I'm afraid that's a bit difficult. I think he's smart. He knows how to play the blame game." Guanshan also laughed. Then he suddenly thought of something. He coughed twice and said, "This matter should be reported, right?" This change in attitude stunned the police. Guanshan smiled professionally. "It's like this. Actually, I'm a reporter from Hangzhou Daily. I can interview what was professional. This was professionalism. Even if someone broke into the house, the first thing they would think of was to publish a report. The policeman was at a loss whether to laugh or cry. This was the first time he had encountered a situation where the informant suddenly became a reporter. However, it was not a bad thing. After consulting his superiors and confirming that there were no problems, he cooperated. Lu Ming kept waiting for Brother Wang, who he thought was omnipotent, to appear. However, even when Guanshan decided on the headline for the newspaper, he did not appear. Furthermore, because of his excuse, the police had already searched the area, but they did not find the dozens of people he mentioned. They treated him as a lunatic. Impossible. Brother Wang and the rest must have entered. How can they not be here? Lu Ming was still muttering to himself when he was taken away. The policeman shook his head. You might have to be sent to a mental hospital first. It just so happens that a new mental hospital recently opened. Lu Ming was in disbelief as he immediately shouted at him. I'm not sick. I'm not going to the hospital. I'm a normal person. The policeman asked, All right, how many of you entered Guanshan's house? Lu Ming immediately answered, 11. The policeman asked again, What about the others? Lu Ming, Tianbin shouted at the side. They were eaten. Ha ha ha, they were all eaten? The policeman said, Send them all to the mental hospital. P.S. Second update. Knock on the bowl, as usual. Expectant eyes. Chapter 40. Rui Xiang. Xiaoshan, what's wrong with you? Guanshan looked at the sudden message from Shun Dinghua on his phone and turned to look at the villain next to him. The lights on the second floor were turned on. The girl stood in front of the open window and waved at him. Shan Wai Qing Shan, it's okay. Didn't someone come looking for trouble during the day? It's that group of people again. The murderer of Zhao Hong's case is most likely them. Rui Xiang. Sigma, just as Guanshan was about to console little Shun, he saw the next message that was sent over. Rui Xiang. Do you want me to take a picture? Or a video? Guanshan looked up and saw that Shun Dinghua had taken out her camera and was giving him a sly smile. Guanshan was dumbfounded. As expected of little comrade Shun, they had a tacit understanding and immediately knew that he was going to make a big news story. Shan Wai Qing Shan, just record it. The president wants to be a new media, so it must be posted on the official VB account. A video is the most direct. Rui Xiang. Okay, clever. JPG. He had already gotten permission from Shan Dinghua. After Shan Dinghua ran over and greeted him, she began to film the following actions. Although Lu Ming tried to quibble, Tianbin betrayed his teammates faster than he did. He confessed to the crimes of their group. Not only did they break into Guanshan's house tonight with evil intentions, but they also confessed to what they did to Zhao Hong and his wife 2 months ago. Not to mention the rope and knife, plus the recording, the evidence was conclusive. Guanshan also submitted the photo. Anyway, he was going to write the manuscript tonight and contact Li Jing directly. The photo was first-hand evidence, so there was no point in hiding it. There was no doubt about the crimes of these two people. As for why they were tied up with bruises on their faces, of course, it was because Guanshan defended himself. Guanshan and Shun Dinghua also went to the police station and cooperated with the police to record their statements. They smiled as they watched the police take the two mentally deranged young men away. Lu Ming was still vaguely shouting, Tianbin framed me, he killed people, Brother Wang will save me, and so on. He even tried to resist and escape. However, the police uncles were obviously experienced and knowledgeable. A big bag of bullshit was enough to make the criminals obedient. Guanshan had made a great contribution by reporting the crime. In addition, he had fought bravely with the criminal and almost won a Good Samaritan award. However, Guanshan decided to keep a low profile. Otherwise, if he were to report that he had acted bravely for a just cause, it would not feel right no matter how he thought about it. All right, let's go back. The police who had negotiated with Guanshan at the beginning sent the two of them back and said, Be careful these few days. The police station will send people to protect you, but the accomplices that Lu Ming mentioned definitely exist. It's just that they haven't shown up yet. Guanshan nodded. Jokes aside, it was funny that Lu Ming used his accomplices to intimidate others. However, there were so many people who had broken into Zhao Hong's house, and now only 2 of them had been arrested. The rest naturally had to be extra careful. He was fine, but these people had their eyes on little Shun. The police car drove away. Guanshan thought for a while and said to Shun Dinghua seriously, These few days, let's live together. Huh? Shun Dinghua blinked and did not react. Guanshan explained, Your parents are not at home. If we live together, I can protect you. Do you want to go to your house or my house? He said it righteously. Shen Dinghua's little face suddenly became bright red. She didn't know what to do and covered her face with her hands. After a while, she said in a low voice, "Your house." Guanshan looked as if he had discovered a new continent. He came closer and pinched Shen Dinghua's baby fat face. "Little comrade Shen, why are you shy?" It felt soft and smooth. Just by touching it, he could imagine the scene of round water droplets sliding down from the surface without any hindrance. The legendary skin that was as smooth as cream was nothing more than this. However, Guanshan was more concerned about Shen Dinghua's rare shy appearance at this moment. The girl's ears and fair neck were dyed with a sunset glow. In the hazy night, nothing could be more beautiful than this. Shen Dinghua looked at him, turned around with her hands behind her back, and walked towards Guanshan's house. She whispered because, "I haven't been to Xiaoshan's house," she said with hidden bitterness and disappointment. "I can even chat so happily with a relative who is a police officer, but I haven't even seen my childhood sweetheart in Xiaoshan's house." Could this be compared? Guanshan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then he remembered that it seemed to be the case. Shen Dinghua often invited him to her house, but he didn't know why Shen Dinghua had never been to his house. Even if he pulled back the timeline to kindergarten, it was the same. It was this strange feeling of distance again. Guanshan shook his head and thought that little comrade Shen was angry. He chased after her and said helplessly, "Can't you stay now? Before those people are arrested, you can stay in my house. Moreover, Gaoyu is the one who came to ask me. I just rejected her." Shen Dinghua immediately turned her head and said happily, "Then I want to stay in Xiaoshan's room." Guanshan, why did he feel like he had been fooled? He looked at Shen Dinghua as she skipped up the stairs and sighed helplessly. But what could he do? "My room is the first one on the left. The bathroom is next door. There are spare toiletries in the cabinet. I have to fix the door first. I have to write a draft at night. Send a video to me. Go to sleep first." Guanshan shouted upstairs. After getting Shen Dinghua's response, he turned around and went to work, fixing the door, contacting the president, writing a draft, editing the video. When Guanshan finished everything, it was already 3:00 in the morning. He looked at the official account with only a few thousand followers on the computer and titled it, "Zhao Hong and his wife's cold case comes to an end? Juvenile offenders arrested." The news video was released. Guanshan was very satisfied. "It's only the first day, and I've already completed 1/3 of the task. This progress is not bad. Next is the holdout and the medical dispute." In fact, it wasn't just not bad. When Li Jiying received the news in the middle of the night, the mask on her face fell off. She stayed up all night and applied the mask on her face. Suddenly, she was told that the case was solved and that there was an exclusive news. This was an unsolved case that had been put aside for 2 months. She didn't expect Guanshan to come up with a result. She just hoped that Guanshan would make some progress with the clues that Jiang Xian had sorted out. As a result, this progress directly flew into the universe on a rocket. Fast forward to the part where the murderer was arrested. It had only been a day since Li Jiying gave the document to Guanshan. "You're not a reporter, you're a detective, right?" However, no matter how much Li Jiying doubted her life and felt that her talent was wasted, Guanshan still diligently finished his work on the other side. Guanshan closed the computer and found that he didn't feel sleepy at all. He ran to the living room sofa and checked the breakthrough task that had been stuck in his throat. PS1. This chapter is timed. Don't ask why. If you ask, it's because the original God has opened a new map. PS2. Thank you to Kuwait City. Readers 20210202920221484028245 and Space Towers for your tips. Chapter 41. Breakthrough Mission. Hell's Border not activated. Requirements. Level 10. Follow the instructions to activate the designated simulation scene after 3 days at midnight. Description. He is burned out, but hell is still far away. Asterisk note. The difficulty of the breakthrough mission is high. Please make sufficient preparations before attempting it. Guanshan did not bother about it, because of the time limit of 3 days later. In other words, the mission would only be activated at midnight the next day. Although it was said that way, it was actually only 1 day. It's been a day, and the shop hasn't unlocked any new items. The cooldown of magic rune drawing hasn't passed either. Can I prepare a coffin for myself? Guanshan looked at the mission panel and the mission description that seemed to want to kill him and was worried. There was only a pitiful nuclear flashlight in the shop. At this point, if he wanted to obtain more items, he was afraid that he would have to use the broken metal plate to open a dungeon and clear it. The quality of the items depended on luck. However, considering the difficulty of the zombie dungeon, Guanshan had reason to suspect that he would die on the spot if he opened it again. If you don't break through, you won't be able to clear the instance dungeon. However, if you can't clear the instance dungeon, you need to become stronger. Simulator F*CKU. Did you hear that? F*CKU. Guanshan felt that this damn simulator wanted him to die. I'm running out of space in my backpack. Guanshan touched his chin and suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Sigh, since items could be taken out and exist outside the dungeon, then why not just leave the useless items at home? Anyway, the items given by the simulator were all virtual and would only affect him. Only the abilities were real. He simply placed the cubic heteron, the box used to store it, and the key to the box on the antique shelf in the living room. The black crystal looked very strange and had a clear mineral texture. It looked like some kind of precious gemstone. It was even placed in a special box. It looked like it was deliberately put on display to show off. It's quite nice. Guanshan was very satisfied. With this, the backpack's capacity became. It was more than enough to support 1 dungeon. Guanshan shifted his gaze to the interior of the shop. After thinking about it, he decided to buy the flashlight as well. He now had 10,675 game coins, which was more than enough to buy a 666-game flashlight. However, this was because he had accumulated 3 dungeons. If it were before, this flashlight would have been ridiculously expensive. There was no value in it at all. One must know, the beginner survival combo pack for 648 game coins included the crowbar and the adrenaline injection. And this nuclear flashlight was sold for 666. Where the hell did this thing come from? How dare they sell a flashlight at such a price? That stupid simulator must have put this thing in the store to scam people, right? Guanshan coughed. He had to make it clear that he didn't buy this thing because he was bored or stupid. It was the zombie siege dungeon that made him realize the simulator's effect on the environment was much greater than he had expected. Not only did it affect items and buildings, but it also affected the weather and light. During the day, it could simulate the effect of night. If it was immoral and simulated a completely dark environment, Guanshan would have no choice but to surrender on the spot. Therefore, he bought a flashlight in case of emergency. Guanshan couldn't help but complain, but no matter how I think about it, it's ridiculous. Even if the beginner's gift pack was discounted, could this flashlight be worth more than all the other items added together? The flashlight's introduction was also very simple. Nuclear flashlight. Effect. Illuminate the path ahead. Description. The light that never goes out is the fire of civilization. Oh, deliberately mystifying. Guanshan had always been disdainful of this kind of fancy product. No matter how nice it sounded, it was just a flashlight that could always be lit. Guanshan played with the flashlight in his hand. He felt that it was slightly heavy. The matte black appearance made it look more high-tech. If he changed the scene, he felt like he could shoot out a lightsaber at any time. Guanshan casually turned on the flashlight. Hum! A low buzzing sound suddenly sounded, and the slight vibration from his wrist could even be felt in his bones. Guanshan was stunned. He felt that something was wrong. He looked at the flashlight in his hand that was emitting a normal cold white light and carefully turned it to look at the front. The structure of this flashlight source is a bit familiar. Isn't this the thing on Iron Man's chest? F*CK. A flashlight made from small nuclear reactor is a nuclear flashlight? Guanshan was stunned. He looked at the flashlight in his hand and didn't know whether to say true to its name or terrifying. Now I know why it's more expensive than the beginner's gift pack. Guanshan came back to his senses. He regretfully turned off the flashlight and put it back in the backpack. Unfortunately, it was fake. Otherwise, if he could sell it, he wouldn't have to worry about money for the rest of his life. That's it. I'll rest at home during the day and recharge my energy. I'll do the mission at night. Guanshan stretched. Seeing that the sky was about to brighten, he went upstairs to sleep. He walked softly to his room and saw a small, unknown object curled up on the bed. He couldn't help but smile. The cool air from the air conditioner was blowing. Guanshan walked over quietly. He planned to take a quilt from the closet and make a bed on the floor. But as soon as he made the bed, he met a pair of resentful eyes. Guanshan froze. Sorry, did I wake you up? Shindinghua sat up with the quilt wrapped around her knees. Her whole body was like a steam bun. Only her puffy cheeks and 2 small white feet were exposed. A strand of hair stood up on the top of her head. She looked listless. She forced herself to be awake and said sullenly, "No, I didn't sleep." Guanshan sat cross-legged on the floor and rubbed Shindinghua's head. He sighed. "Didn't I tell you to go to bed early?" Shindinghua acted like a spoiled child. "I want a small mountain." "You want a small mountain to carry you?" Guanshan said at the same time. Shindinghua nodded vigorously and looked at Guanshan with anticipation. How could Guanshan not respond? Thus, he reached out and hugged Shindinghua. At the same time, he helped her wrap the blanket even tighter around her. He said gently, "Don't catch a cold. Good night." Then he lay back on the floor and closed his eyes to sleep. Shindinghua? The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. She wrapped herself up like a spring roll and rolled off the bed. She fell on Guanshan. Bang! Guanshan dead. What? Tang Ji suspected that there was something wrong with his ears. Otherwise, how could he have heard the murderer who killed dozens of people and almost received a banner for bravery? Xiaolei was stunned. He almost spat out the tea in his mouth. He muttered, "I was just joking about him acting bravely for a just cause." He really did act bravely for a just cause, Gao Yi whispered. It's a new clue from Zhao Hong's case. The 2 people who were arrested said that they were instigated. They should be from the killer bees. Xiaolei composed himself. But these 2 people aren't the real culprits. Forget it. Let them be judged as the real culprits. They can avoid the death penalty, but they can't escape punishment. I see. Tang Ji breathed a sigh of relief and frowned. The killer bees are really heartless. They can even do something like this. Gao Yi said firmly, "That's why we have to act immediately. We have to start from the nearest point. The killer bees will be conducting experiments there tonight. We have to stop them. P.S. In the gods. In the gods, there's no such thing. Wawa, please recommend me. Please comfort me, winky face." Chapter 42. Inside the Tay Information Office. Xiaolei turned on the computer and displayed the map of the nearest experimental site. The location of this mission is the Iron Foundry on Binhai Road. It's close to the southern suburbs of Hangzhou, so you don't have to worry about restrictions. However, you have to pay attention to the enemy's use of the foundry's equipment. According to the follow-up information, although the killer bees' movements are scattered, there are indeed signs of them moving south. Moreover, Worker Bee 1 has appeared in the vicinity. If they want to conduct a large-scale experiment there will definitely be a lot of people gathered there. There may even be drones. It's very dangerous, so Chen Yunping's eyes lit up. So you will personally go? As the instructor of Team U, Xiaolei had the strength of a B class. He was once a member of the 10 heavenly stems of the Taiyan formation. It was said that he had outstanding military achievements, and even his ability was classified as a secret. However, he had to retire because of his physical disability. The 3-man team often discussed what Xiaolei's ability was and how strong a B-class ability user would be. Xiaolei smiled, full of the calm aura of a reliable middle-aged man. "No," he said, "I'm only responsible for command and rescue. There will be people from other teams to cooperate with you. If you unfortunately die, according to the rules, your body will be safely sent back to your hometown. Don't worry, a large sum of money will be immediately handed over to your family." Chen Yunpeng, Tang Ji wailed. "Minor Xia, you don't have to be so realistic, right? At least comfort us." Xiaolei laughed and patted him on the shoulder. "I can comfort you, but no one can comfort the victims. Hurry up and prepare. The killer bees are gathering. It's a good opportunity for us to deal a heavy blow to them. He turned to Gao Yi and said, Yi, try your best. Gao Yi was stunned, but Xiao Lei smiled. I've borrowed a domain ability user. You don't have to worry about hurting ordinary people. Gao Yi nodded and clenched her long sword. Xiao Lei explained some of the mission information and details of the operation, and asked the three of them to familiarize themselves with the domain type ability user. Sitting alone in the office, he took a sip of tea and suddenly asked, How are you adapting to the C rank ability? Shuman Lin, who had been standing at the side, was startled. She said cautiously, It's okay, but it seems that I can't withdraw my ability for the time being. Originally, according to her ability level, the C-class Gao Yi should be able to detect her, but because of the influence, he would subconsciously ignore her most of the time. As for Tang Ji and Chen Yunpeng, only when Shuman Lin took the initiative to observe them would they be able to discover her existence. Yesterday, after Shuman Lin finished her mission, she was still in shock and wanted to report about Shen Dinghua. However, she gradually realized that Gao Yi couldn't detect her. When she spoke in the channel, she would be ignored. After Lin Shuman panicked for a while, she finally confirmed that her special ability had actually leveled up. It directly went from D rank to C rank. After realizing this, Shuman Lin was stunned for a full 5 minutes, thinking about why she leveled up. 5 minutes later, she figured out. When she accepted the science of the take and formation ability, the experts once said that the psychic abilities of the trait system all had one characteristic, and that was that they were very idealistic. Other abilities might require constant training to level up, but this one was different. As long as you thought hard enough, anything was possible. So, what was she thinking at that time? Why did she level up directly? Shuman Lin thought about life for another 5 minutes. She finally realized that it was because of Shen Dinghua's glance. At that time, she was scared to the extreme, and the only thought in her mind was, don't see me. In addition, because of the continuous deaths in the past few days, her desire to achieve a higher level of no sense of existence became stronger and stronger. In an instant, she broke through the bottleneck. In short, she was so scared that she leveled up directly. That's good. This shows that the strength of your ability has great potential. Remember to register again and find a psychologist to guide you. You should be able to stabilize in a few days. Now, Xiao Lei could only keep looking at Shuman Lin to ensure that he didn't suddenly ignore her. He poured a cup of tea for her and said thoughtfully, Speaking of which, your breakthrough case is very classic. It's a good reference for those psychic ability users. Shuman Lin suddenly had an ominous premonition. Xiao Lei continued, I'll talk to old Lu in a few days and add your example into the training course. Shuman Lin's eyes were dead. Who is old Lu? He was the expert who gave all the registered psychic ability users scientific training. Every registered psychic had to accept the training course written by him. Ordinary people's breakthrough. Fight with the enemy for 3 days and 3 nights, until the path is about to be obliterated. Exhausted, the small universe erupts, break through, and successfully kill the enemy. Shuman Lin's breakthrough. Because she was too scared by a glance, she directly broke through. In the future, all the psychic ability users will know about this. Xiao Lei saw that her expression was not right and said kindly, Don't worry, I'll count you as the author. You'll get paid. Shuman Lin was expressionless. She thought to herself, I'm not worried about the money. I'm worried about the train tickets today. It's not too late to buy them now, right? Then it's settled. Xiao Lei said seriously, By the way, you reported Shen Dinghua's abnormality very timely. In order not to arouse her vigilance, you don't have to follow Guan Shan for the time being. It's a good opportunity for you to adapt to your ability. Shuman Lin was stunned and suddenly felt relieved. She quickly nodded and then left happily. It's great that I don't have to follow these 2 guys. Even social death wasn't that scary anymore. Xiao Lei closed the deployment information on the computer. Another interface showed the more detailed investigation results of Shen Dinghua. There were 4 photos at the top. They were photos of Shen Dinghua in kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, and high school. It was obvious that from kindergarten to middle school, Shan Dinghua belonged to the category of very beautiful, but her temperament was very quiet, like a good-looking artistic girl in class. But when she was in high school, she suddenly gave people a different feeling. Her eyes and eyebrows glowed with a strange, infectious power. When she looked at people with a smile, it was as if there was magic, making people unable to look away. However, Xiaolei knew that this change was far from simple. After taking the photos to the logistics department for analysis, the conclusion was that although Shan Dinghua's appearance did not change much, in fact, even her bone structure was completely different. In other words, the Shan Dinghua in high school and the Shan Dinghua in kindergarten to middle school were not the same person. P.S. First update, knock the bowl eagerly. Chapter 43. Xiaolei's expression was solemn. The current Shan Dinghua was no longer the Shan Dinghua of the past. There was no doubt about that. But the key question was, who was she? What was her purpose? Was she related to the abnormalities that Guanshan had shown? These three questions would determine the nature and severity of the whole matter. This is tricky. Xiaolei leaned back and felt a headache coming on. I thought that Guanshan was difficult enough, but I didn't expect that the real difficult one was actually Shan Dinghua, who I didn't even notice at the beginning. The logistics department still hadn't analyzed what Guanshan's supernatural ability was. They could only classify it as a special ability with a grade of C for the time being. From his performance so far, it was clear that he had a mixture of space, physical strengthening, and curses. The other vague abilities hadn't been taken into account yet. It made people wonder if he had a little bit of each ability. There was only one such special case in recorded history. And because there was no energy level reaction, there was no way to determine how strong his destructive power was. The higher-ups were also very hesitant about how to deal with Guanshan. A green psychological evaluation meant that he could be used, but the uncertainty of his ability and energy level meant that he couldn't be controlled. If they wanted to recruit him, they needed to gain his trust and information as much as possible. This wasn't good. That wasn't good either. In the end, they consulted Xiaolei, who had formal contact with the other party, and agreed to give him a special position as a non-staff member. This matter was supposed to end just like that. Who knew that another Shan Dinghua would appear? There's too little information. Xiaolei pondered. If it wasn't for Xiaoman's ability, she might not have been exposed at all. But Xiaoman has always been following Guanshan. For Shan Dinghua, it's not important. In other words, she should have released a warning signal for Guanshan. Then, the reason for impersonating Shan Dinghua might be Guanshan. Xiaolei thought of the information he had collected about Guanshan. This person and Shan Dinghua had been childhood sweethearts who had grown up together. But this childhood sweetheart might have changed midway. Guanshan, on the other hand, was completely oblivious. It was simply hair-raising. Something's not right. Xiaolei frowned as he looked at the photo in the file. His gaze was heavy as he said, Shan Dinghua's change node is related to Guanshan. When he was in high school, Guanshan's parents passed away in an accident. Guanshan took a break from school and stayed at home for half a year. At that time, Shan Dinghua would go to Guanshan's house every day to take care of Guanshan. Could it be that she was actually influenced by Guanshan? Xiaolei felt that he couldn't see through Guanshan. From his short contact with Guanshan, he felt that Guanshan was very normal. Other than being a little fierce when he killed people, he was very ordinary at other times. He even acted bravely for a just cause. Such a person, no matter how he thought about it, wouldn't change his childhood sweetheart. Xiaolei let out a long sigh. He had no clue at all. He scratched his head and slammed the laptop shut. Let the logistics department investigate the experience of these two people during high school again. I don't believe that there are no clues left behind. Then, Xiaolei directly used his authority to access the Taiyan Formation's Special Events Archive. It recorded some things that were difficult for ordinary people to understand, including many records of abnormal creatures. He wanted to find similar events in order to determine the origin of Shan Dinghua. In this world, human beings were not the only ones who received gifts from God. In addition to ability users, there were also some abnormal phenomena. Some were solved, and some were not. The struggle between ability users was just a small part of it. The archive was unimaginably huge. Xiaolei's investigation took him a whole day. When his thoughts were interrupted by the phone, he looked up and found that it was already afternoon. Although he had special earphones, it consumed his mental strength to use them. It was better to use normal means to communicate when not on a mission. It was Gao Yi on the phone. "Teacher, we are ready. The operation is expected to start in an hour. We have found traces of the worker bees and confirmed that the information is true. They have begun to converge at the factory." Xiaolei took a deep breath. "Good. Wait for the right time. Don't let your guard down. Confirm the number of enemies. Attack them one by one." Gao Yi said in a deep voice, "Yes." At the same time, behind number 1 Iron Foundry, Worker B1 was sitting at the top of the factory's tower crane. He narrowed his eyes and looked down at everything below. His real name was Du Xiao. He was a sea-level ability user with a domain-type ability, Fog. He had a panoramic view of the entire factory. Relying on this broad field of vision and the connection between worker bees, he could clearly know the position of his own people and the position of the enemy. TSK. Not even a little bit of camouflage. "How much do you look down on us?" Worker B1 played with the pendant in his hand. A sea-level ability user of the Taiyan formation. "She looks like a little girl. How can you be at ease with her entering the thieves' den? You want to catch them all in one fell swoop. Aren't we catching turtles in a jar? Let's see who is stronger." The other worker bees were bringing experimental subjects into the factory and gradually moving closer to the center. Within 300 meters, the connection between worker bees was very clear. In Du Xiao's mind, he could almost form a map, marked with the position of all of them, enemies and allies. As time passed, the distance between each other was getting closer and closer. Finally, 2 of the points touched. It's time." Du Xiao stood up, opened his arms, and closed his eyes. Thick fog instantly erupted from the night and spread, covering the entire factory. After resting for a day, Guanshan prepared all the props and took inventory of all his equipment. Quietly in the living room, he waited for the arrival of midnight. Click! Finally, the hour hand and the minute hand coincided. The familiar mechanical voice of the simulator came as expected. "Breakthrough mission, Hell's Border, started. Please follow the prompt and go to the designated location to simulate the scene." Guanshan took a deep breath. The world in front of him twisted and changed in an instant. Endless darkness appeared from nothing. From the outside to the inside, it covered everything visible. Only Guanshan was left. It really came. Fortunately, I was prepared. Guanshan turned on the flashlight. A bright light suddenly illuminated the road about 3 meters in front of him. In front of him, there was a dark red torii. PS1. Thank you for martial ancestor Gu Xiaoshang's reward. PS2. Second update. As usual, looking for recommendation votes, looking for monthly votes. Chapter 44. Guanshan narrowed his eyes. Torii. As everyone knew, the torii was the landmark of the Ingzhou shrine and represented the entrance to the divine realm. The door-shaped torii was the boundary between the divine realm and the human world. Its existence was to remind visitors that the residence of God was right in front of them and that they should start to pay attention to their words and actions. Guanshan's mouth twitched. "But the simulation's name is Hell's Border. Once I cross this door, I probably won't enter the realm of God, but the beginning of hell, right?" Out of caution, Guanshan didn't immediately walk forward. Instead, he used the flashlight to observe his surroundings. It was pitch black all around him. Even the nuclear flashlight could only illuminate a distance of about 3 meters in front of him. Beyond that, there was only an empty and deep darkness. But in reality, the place where the light shone was also empty. The ground seemed to be floating, and there was nothing there. It was terrifying to look at. The feeling of being surrounded by the unknown was simply chilling. Since I'm already here, I have no choice but to do the breakthrough mission. I have no choice but to go. Guanshan hesitated for a long time, took a deep breath, gritted his teeth, and walked in the direction of the torii. Fortunately, the ground under his feet at least felt normal. The meaning of this torii is so obvious. It must be the so-called guidance. Guanshan stopped in front of the torii and stretched out his hand to test it. After passing through it, he didn't feel anything strange, so he calmed himself down and walked in from the center of the torii. The moment he passed through the torii, Guanshan saw the light of the flashlight illuminate a piece of smooth, delicate skin. Guanshan was stunned and subconsciously moved the flashlight upward. The piece of skin extended along the light as if there was no end. Under the strong light, it was obvious that this was human skin. It was covered with fine lines, and thin blue veins could even be seen. He could clearly feel that this piece of skin was moving up and down as if it was breathing. It was alive. However, this piece of skin didn't grow on a human body. Instead, it extended for dozens of meters, as if it was wrapped around something irregular, forming a huge and strange shape. It was like a living human skin wall. What the hell is that? Guanshan's eyelids twitched, and his hand trembled. He shone the flashlight around, and all he saw were similar things. He subconsciously took 2 steps back and wanted to run. However, when he turned around, he discovered that Tori had disappeared without him noticing. Damn it! At the same time, the simulator's notification sounded again. Scanning completed. Breakthrough mission activated. Generated horror game. Limbo. Plot loading. Please wait. Plot loading complete. You wandered here, searching for the door of reincarnation between life and death. At the first crossing of the road, you take off your clothes. At the second crossing of the road, you put down your memories. At the third crossing of the road, you abandon your body. The burden is gone, but the road is still difficult. You will go to the top of the mountain naked and fall in the wind and rain. You will be cut into pieces and scattered into flesh and blood. You've burned out, but hell is still far away. Asterisk note. This simulation will only end when the final boss is killed. Woo! Woo! At the same time, an air raid siren suddenly sounded in the vast darkness. It was as deafening as the angry roar of an awakened mountain beast. Anyone who had watched the movie Silent Hill would have a deep impression of this siren, because as long as this siren sounded, it meant that the horrifying inner world was about to descend. Guanshan was so scared that his heart almost stopped. He immediately took out his pistol and held the flashlight in his other hand. He looked back. The light illuminated the area. The strange human skin wall instantly began to rot. Countless bruises and wounds appeared on it. The wounds curled up, and a large amount of blood gushed out, turning into a river of blood. Asterisk Shing. Asterisk a white hand broke out from the human skin, bringing with it blood and mucus. Guanshan, on the other hand, heaved a sigh of relief. Damn, he thought that some kind of monster would appear. It was just a humanoid monster. He was almost used to it. No matter how ugly or scary it was, he would not be afraid. That's it. That's it. He thought that the breakthrough mission would be different, but in the end, it was still the same. Haha, this dog simulator finally ran out of tricks. Asterisk Shing. Asterisk the second hand broke through the flesh and came out. The 2 hands pulled to the sides as if they were pulling out the rest of the body. A confident smile appeared on Guanshan's face. He raised his Glock 17 and prepared to give the monster a headshot. Asterisk Shing. Asterisk the third hand appeared. Guanshan vaguely felt that something was wrong. Asterisk Shing. 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 The fourth hand followed, then the fifth, the sixth, the 10th. Countless arms crowded together and connected to form an arm worm that was dozens of meters tall. It crawled out together with all its strength. The moment it rushed out, it fell heavily to the ground. Asterisk boom. Asterisk, even the darkness seemed to be shaken. Several arms were directly broken, and they let out sharp screams. However, this didn't affect the other arms. They waved wildly, chattered, and then crawled toward Guanshan at high speed. 1,000 Hen Maggot, Alvin. Health points, 3,000. Description. The sinner who has been redeemed holds the spider web and looks down. Thousands of limbs are leaning toward him. WDNMD. Cold sweat slid down Guanshan's forehead. He held the flashlight tightly, and his first reaction was to pull the trigger. Asterisk bang. Asterisk the gunfire burst out in the darkness. The The bullet hit the maggot's body and exploded into a gorgeous firework. -30, 200, -9, -9, -9. Several arms were broken in an instant, and the explosion and fire damage were added. The basic damage of the bullet itself has been weakened by 20. This monster's defense should be about the same as the chef, but the explosion and fire damage are obviously increased. Guanshan turned and ran, thinking, "This monster is weak. It's not difficult to fight." In the description given by the simulator, it's said to hold the spiderweb. That should be the meaning. As long as the spiderweb is burned, the sinner will naturally stay in hell forever. The maggot used its numerous hands to roll on the ground and broke the limbs attached to the flames directly. It screamed angrily and crawled toward Guanshan again. Guanshan's heart was in his mouth. He randomly picked a direction with no monsters and ran, turning back to shoot from time to time. The flashlight's light was shaky. All around him were the same human skin walls. They were constantly rotting, and other monsters crawled out from them. Guanshan used gravity manipulation to speed up his run and analyzed. Currently, they're only small monsters. This map is too big, and the boss doesn't seem to be as active as before. Do I have to find it myself? According to the plot, it should go to a higher place. He turned back and saw that the maggot was still crawling. He was relieved and thought to himself that it was easy to fight monsters without ranged attacks and slow speed. The next second, one of the maggot's hands suddenly opened and grasped empty air. A silver spider web appeared from thin air and quietly wrapped around the pistol in Guanshan's hand. Your Glock 17, burning, is temporarily unavailable. Guanshan was speechless. PS1. Thank you, Afrashui. Voice can change, moi. PS2. First update. Looking for recommendation votes. Looking for monthly votes. Chapter 45. Goodbye, weapon. This was the nickname of Worker B2's ability. In fact, her ability's official name was Killing Intent Seal. This was a special ability. As long as the opponent had killing intent in their heart, they wouldn't be able to pick up a lethal weapon. The judgment of lethal was based on the opponent's thoughts. If the opponent thought that the weapon in his hand could cause harm to the enemy, then it belonged to this category. In actual combat, Duan Ning's ability could often play an unimaginable role, especially for the relics of immortals who were still fighting with cold weapons. This ability was enough to directly disable most of their strength. As a senior C-level ability user, she had far more combat experience than Tao Luo, who was more experienced in combat. She was stronger in combat and calmer in her actions. Therefore, this time, she was sent to assist Worker B1 to complete the encirclement and suppression of the Tan formation. Yes, from the Killer Bee's point of view, this time, they were encircling and suppressing the Tan formation. In fact, it was only a matter of time before the Tan formation found them. Whether it was a surprise attack or an ambush, it was just a matter of life and death. The Killer Bees, who had always been hiding and killing, were used to it. Anyway, the location of their experiment was far more than what the Tan formation knew. The internal personnel could only know a part of it, and the rest would definitely not be exposed in a short period of time. The result of this matter had already been decided, and it wasn't something that the Tan formation could stop. But it's also very troublesome to be constantly harassed. So, tonight, someone from the Tan formation must die to make them behave. Duan Ning looked at the factory in the night, and her heart was calm. According to the habits of the Killer Bees in the past, when they sensed that the Tan formation was investigating, they would immediately change their location. But now, they did the opposite and gathered all the members of the swarm nearby. Didn't the Tan formation know that this was a trap? Maybe they knew. But for them, this was the first opportunity to destroy the Killer Bees experiment. So, of course, they wouldn't let it go. But with the strength of the Tan formation in Hangzhou, they're just sending themselves to death. Duan Ning scoffed at the three-man team from Yohao Group. They were just a few children. Every time they appeared in the intelligence reports, they would be defeated. It was impossible to imagine how such people would fight to the death. Duan Ning saw the thick fog outside and knew that Du Xiao had started to move. Not only could Du Zhao's dense fog interfere with the enemy's vision in a large area, it also carried a slight poison that could cause hallucinations. What was even more frightening was that his fog actually had a physical body and could be controlled. They had thought that it was just a light mist in the environment, but now that it suddenly attacked them, it was likely that most of them would die. Boss, since you've already activated your domain, it should be about time, right? It's time for me to meet that little girl from the Immortal Encyclopedia. I haven't hunted an immortal relic for a long time. I hope this person can bring me some surprises after the weapon is sealed. Duan Ning smiled sweetly and stood up to stretch her body. Just as she was about to leave the factory, she suddenly realized that there was another person outside the window. Duan Ning was stunned. She was sure that this person had suddenly appeared out of thin air in the blink of an eye. It was a black-haired young man holding a flashlight. He looked gentle and handsome. With the help of the flashlight, he looked around the foundry. The flashlight's light could be said to be unscrupulous. It swept directly in front of Duan Ning. It was simply a provocation. Space ability? Duan Ning raised her eyebrows. She also felt that it was a provocation. However, the young man's expression was as if he had mistakenly entered a haunted house. He was startled, full of nervousness and fear. He even looked as if he wanted to turn around and leave, but found that he couldn't. He cursed helplessly. Mistakenly entered? Impossible. Duan Ning was very certain, because when Du Zhao's domain was active, the ability of space ability would also be interfered. To enter the fog quietly, one had to be at least a C class. And it was impossible for a mutant of this level not to know that this place would become a battlefield tonight. However, thinking about it was just thinking. Duan Ning wouldn't just stand there like a fool. She directly broke through the window and jumped out. Her eyes were fierce. No matter where this guy came from, he's unlucky to have entered today. The surrounding fog began to surge. The will of the worker bees could be transmitted to each other. At the same time, Du Xiao used it in her own ability. She cooperated with the other worker bees to make the fog into a weapon. The fog gathered around Duan Ning. Like thousands of hands, it suddenly swept toward the young man. The young man was stunned for a moment. Then, he panicked to the extreme and ran away. Before Duan Ning could laugh at him, she saw the young man take out a gun and shoot at her without hesitation. Duan Ning's expression changed. She immediately dodged to the side. Before she could breathe a sigh of relief, she heard an explosion. Bang! Incendiary bomb. Duan Ning was a little stunned. She was directly affected by the shock wave. Her chest was slightly shaken. Not simple indeed. Duan Ning looked at the fog that was directly scattered by the explosion. That panicked and scared look just now was just an act to make me lower my guard. How cunning. When did the Ten Formation find such a guy? For him to make a move at this time, Duan Ning assumed that the Ten Formation found this person to deal with them. But if it's just a weapon, it's exactly what I want. Duan Ning stretched out her hand and stared at the gun. She directly activated her ability. Seeing the other party's shocked and even somewhat horrified expression, Duan Ning curled the corner of her mouth. At the same time, she followed up with another attack. F***CK locked weapon. Guanshan was dumbfounded. Looking at the prompt given by the simulator, he was completely numb. What kind of monster is this? So wicked. As everyone knew, the actual experience of playing a horror game with weapons and a horror game without weapons was like heaven and earth. With a weapon in hand, at least there was some confidence. Without a weapon, there was nothing left. Guanshan looked at the countless maggots that were madly rushing toward him. He felt his scalp go numb and his whole body feel unwell. Now that things have come to this, I can only run. Guanshan wanted to cry, but had no tears. He gritted his teeth and continued to run. The monster continued to chase after him. He didn't even dare to take out other weapons. If he was disarmed again, then he would really have to surrender. But no matter how hard Guanshan ran, gravity manipulation was still on cooldown. 2 legs couldn't compare to so many legs. Soon he was caught up. The arms let out terrifying screams one after another. They raised their heads like maggots and then crushed over. F***CK. Guanshan rolled on the ground, but he didn't roll out of the range. He had to activate Butcher's Heart and raise his arm to block the attack. Dash 145. A blood-red number floated up. Guan Shan gritted his teeth and held on, but found that, wasn't that strenuous? Huh. P.S. Although I don't know why, I'll put a bowl here first, hint. Chapter 46. It doesn't seem to be strenuous at all. This monster is weaker than I thought. Countless eyes opened and closed on the innumerable arms that formed the maggots. Several tiny red tentacles drilled out of the eyes and the palms and twisted into long needles, constantly attacking Guan Shan. Guan Shan could only grab the nearest arm. The long needle almost pierced his eye socket. He could only rely on Guan Shan's support to prevent it from falling. He resisted for a while longer and gradually came to his senses. He was certain of the monster's characteristics. When a huge monster came over, Guan Shan was prepared to lose half of his HP. He closed his eyes and gritted his teeth. It was just a little blood. He didn't expect that he would only lose 145 HP. It was much easier than when he faced the chef. When the chef punched, Guan Shan lost a quarter of his HP. Although Guan Shan's current level was also a factor, his HP did not increase significantly compared to these monsters. He had no advantage at all. Guan Shan originally thought that this monster was also a chef with high HP. He didn't expect that it only had a little more HP, but its actual damage was not much. Although such a long and huge monster looked scary, it was actually a silver spearhead. But after calming down and thinking about it, it's true. After all, this monster can lock its weapon, which means that it weakens a lot of its combat power. If its attack power was higher, then the difficulty of this breakthrough mission would be too high. Simulator, I've wronged you. Guan Shan felt guilty. He felt very sorry for insulting the simulator. But on second thought, he felt that something was wrong. This was only the first elite monster, and it was already on par with the previous bosses. How scary would the next monsters be? Stupid simulator. He couldn't let this simulator PUA. He had to scold it. But then again, this monster's weight is not as heavy as I thought. It's about the same as a woman lying on top of me. Why am I so familiar with this? Guan Shan fell into deep thought. He even had the leisure to carefully experience the monster structure while he was struggling. Then he found another suspicious point. There were clearly so many arms in front of him, so many hands, but they were all waving around randomly, as if they were waving flags and shouting battle cries. In reality, the damage they caused was minimal. The only ones who were exerting force were the two arms that Guan Shan was holding. Previously, Guan Shan didn't even have the chance to stare at the monster because it was too despicable. He only cared about running away. Now that he was looking at it from such a close distance, he suddenly realized that the weak point was clearly the two arms that he was grabbing. Good heavens, this is really a meat pie falling from the sky. I hit it head on. How could he fight without a weapon? Guan Shan immediately demonstrated it on the spot. Of course, he was going to fight the monster head on. Phew. Guan Shan took a deep breath and prepared himself mentally. Under the illumination provided by the flashlight that had rolled to the side, the difficulty of facing such a monster directly was not small. If he took another look at it, he would feel like he was about to pee his pants. Guan Shan's eyes were filled with pain. But there's nothing we can do. This is all because of the simulator. Are you afraid? Of course he was scared. But even if he was afraid, he still had to fight. The so-called horror game was to be played with a roar. Damn worm, get up for me. Guan Shan used all his strength and grabbed the two arms tightly with both hands. He twisted them and then flipped over, forcefully flipping the huge monster to the ground. Boom! The thousand hands maggot fell to the ground and waved its countless arms. It let out a terrifying shriek, causing the strange human skin walls to squirm. Guan Shan's scalp went numb. He only wanted to run away, but now that he had finally turned the situation around, he didn't dare to delay at all. Guan Shan used the greatest courage in his life to welcome the countless arms. He directly stepped on them and rushed towards the weak point in his vision. With this step, the strange feeling of stepping on those eyes, Guan Shan felt that he might never eat longan again. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Guan Shan constantly comforted himself and strengthened his mental state. He reached out his hands and grabbed the attacking arms again. However, because he was a little nervous, he only managed to grab one wrist. The other hand was directly pierced by the tentacle needle. -20. Guanshan didn't even look at the red words that jumped out. Instead of retreating, he moved forward. His palm slid down the long needle and directly clasped with the open palm. He used all his strength to hold it tightly. Guanshan exhaled and looked at the eyes that were still opening and closing crazily on the arms in front of him. He told himself to calm down. To be honest, he also didn't know what his current strength level was. Crushing the marble with his bare hands was actually because he could, but it wasn't his limit. In fact, whether he could crush something else, he didn't know. After these few dungeons, he had killed quite a number of monsters. Rotten meat pile. Passive should have increased his strength by at least 20 times. But tearing off an arm shouldn't be too difficult, right? Guanshan had a good mood smile on his face. Blue veins suddenly appeared on his hands. His fingers directly embedded into the skin of the two pale arms. He could hear the skin and flesh being squeezed and the bones being dislocated and broken. Then, he lifted his foot and stepped on the body of the worm and pulled with force. Rip! Ah! Accompanied by an indescribable scream, the pair of pale arms were directly torn off by him. Countless pieces of flesh and tissue were connected by the broken arms. One could vaguely see that even the body of the worm was full of eyes. -2333. A huge number appeared in front of Guanshan's eyes. Critical hit. Guanshan didn't care how the maggot struggled. The moment he saw those eyes, his rationality had completely collapsed. What the F***CK? He threw away one of the arms and pulled out the one that pierced his palm. Then he turned it upside down, the sharp end facing down, and fiercely stabbed at one of the eyeballs. He gave the maggot an exploding bead, toothpick meat. Guanshan cooked for a long time before the system notification rang. EXP plus 2,100. Current EXP 331501000. Not broken. 3525010000. Not broken. The disarm status was removed. Guanshan gasped for breath, looking at the dead worm in front of him with not a single eyeball in sight. Only then did his rationality gradually return. Phew, it's over. Guanshan blinked his eyes and breathed a sigh of relief. His hand was still slightly trembling, and he hurriedly threw away the arm that he had torn off. He calmed down and looked at his body. It was already covered in an unknown liquid, sticky and hot, and still dripping down. Forget it. Which horror game protagonist doesn't get covered in strange things every day? I'll just put up with it. Guanshan picked up his clothes and put them down in disgust. He got down from the worm's body and picked up the flashlight. Looking at the dropped items beside him, his mood finally improved a little. Guanshan rubbed his hands. What good things can a monster that wants me to break through the mission give? P.S. What good things do you have on you? Rubbing hands. Chapter 47. Worker B3, Duan Ning didn't expect that her seemingly correct decision to pursue would bring her a nightmarish ending. In her opinion, the young man who suddenly appeared was doomed to die after she sealed his weapon. He didn't even have a weapon, so what could he do? Zone. Duan Ning drew her sword, a narrow and thin sword made of alloy. Although one of her hobbies was to hunt immortal relics that cultivated qi, she was actually an immortal relics of a legitimate origin. Immortal relics differed from ordinary superpower users because qi was acquired through cultivation. Therefore, some people would awaken their superpower during cultivation and become a rare double superpower user. Duan Ning was such a lucky person. She was proud of her talent, but because of that, she went down the wrong path. A Immortal Relics superpower user who could seal her opponent's weapon was so unique. At first, she cheated in a fight, then she disguised it as a murder by her opponent's own mistake. Finally, she enjoyed the pleasure of one-sided torture. Duan Ning quickly fell and became a hunter of immortal relics. Finally, she became a serial killer. When she was surrounded, it was the killer bee who took her in. So, Duan Ning became a tool again. But she was willing to do it. After all, How many organizations in this world can let me enjoy this kind of pleasure to the fullest? Duan Ning chuckled. Her sword was very fast, and so was her body movement. Her strength had reached the level of a sea-level physical system, strengthening ability under the enhancement of qi. The sword light came first, and then the fog and qi surged and swept toward Guanshan like a wave. Based on her years of experience, she judged that the young man in front of her had no signs of strengthening based on his body size and muscle distribution. This person was most likely a new space user who hadn't done much physical training. Therefore, Duan Ning's decision was to stall him first and not let him use his ability to escape. Swoosh! Duan Ning rushed forward. The fog and qi waves first crushed Guanshan and pressed him to the ground. Then, Duan Ning's knee struck downward while the sword in her hand stabbed forward without hesitation. Guanshan's face was filled with unavoidable panic and fear. He could only raise his hand to take the blow. Duan Ning sneered and raised her sword high. Although Guanshan grabbed her wrist, she did not panic. Give up struggling. You haven't learned any fighting skills, and you haven't trained your body. What can you do? She looked at Guanshan's pitiful appearance as he struggled with all his might, but was unable to shake her off. She felt great joy in her heart. But why do I feel like this person is distracted? Just as this suspicion arose, in the next second, Duan Ning suddenly looked at Guanshan with a stunned expression. She flipped over and threw Duan Ning to the ground. What? She crashed into the building next to her and felt a sharp pain all over her body. Before she could react, Guanshan stepped on her shin. The young man seemed to be treating her as a path. Every step he took was firm and steady. Every step he took was accompanied by the sound of bones cracking. Duan Ning screamed in pain and raised the sword in her hand to stab at him. Ha! Guanshan grabbed her wrist with one hand, while his other hand was pierced by the sword. However, this man's expression remained the same. He had a twisted smile on his face and did not care about the wound at all. He moved his hand all the way down to grab her hand. Duan Ning's pupils contracted as her hands were restrained. She had a premonition that something was going to happen. She was filled with despair and fear as she desperately shook her head. Guanshan looked at her from above and raised his foot to step on her chest. He exerted force with both hands. No, 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 no. Guanshan picked up the loot dropped by the thousand-handed maggot. To his disappointment, although the maggot was the first elite monster, the loot was not as good as he had expected. There were only 3 items in total. Electromagnetic Pulse Disruptor *3, Healing Charm, and Narrow Rapier. This simulator doesn't care if the game is the same or not. It can drop any kind of item. Guanshan could not help but complain. These loot dropped by the same monster, what were they? The first was sci-fi, the second was Western fantasy, and the third was ancient? Could it be that this monster had eaten all the people it had killed and left all the weapons and equipment in its stomach? But the problem was that this monster did not have a mouth. Its entire body was made of hands. Those who pursue rationality in horror games must be fools. Guanshan finally came to a conclusion. He gave up thinking and continued to look at the information of the loot. Electromagnetic Pulse Disruptor. There was nothing much to say about it. It was too classic. It was EMP after all. If I encounter any high-tech monsters in the future, this thing will come in handy. It can directly paralyze them. Guanshan shook his head. But the probability of encountering high-tech monsters in horror games is probably not high. Let's put it aside for now. The next item, Healing Charm, was the one that surprised Guanshan the most. Healing Charm. Effect. When standing still, health points will slowly recover. If damaged at this time, it will be interrupted. It will take up 1 accessory. Description. A mysterious charm from the witch doctor. It is drawn on a special cloth soaked in oil. An accessory. And it was an accessory with a healing function. At this moment, Guanshan wished he could hug the maggot and kiss it. He looked at the monster's body on the ground. It was almost impossible to tell what it was anymore. He smiled embarrassedly. Forget it, as long as the intention was there. Recovering health points while standing still. Isn't this the classic breathing technique? It's a godly skill. But this thing has more restrictions. It has to stand still and can't move. It will be a bit useless in a dungeon. After all, every dungeon is so urgent and there is no time to rest. Although that was what he said, Guanshan directly equipped the accessory. The accessory he originally wore, Butcher's Heart, had been used 3 times. Including the one just now, it had died of old age. The empty accessory position could be replaced with Healing Charm. The plan worked. The remaining narrow edge rapier, S attack was not as strong as the poisoned high-speed chainsaw. Guanshan directly sold it to the shop for 200 game coins to save space. Out of the 3 dropped items, only Healing Charm was useful. However, to Guanshan, who lacked healing skills, the value of this item was even higher than the active skill. Although it was few, it was good. Guanshan nodded with satisfaction. He simply stood on the spot and recovered his health points while observing the surroundings. The monsters that emerged from the rotten human skin wall looked more and more abstract. They were all strange combinations of body parts and did not even have a head. After looking at them for a long time, his sanity level dropped rapidly. As expected of Hell's Border, these monsters are too much like the underworld. Guanshan sighed. He realized that these monsters did not charge at him. Instead, most of them fled. Some of them stayed on the spot for some reason, twitching from time to time. Because they did not have a head or a face, it was impossible to determine the intentions of these monsters. Guanshan touched his chin and pondered. Could it be that this elite monster was the leader? After it died, these monsters lost their leader and did not know what to do. It can't be that they were frightened by the scene of me killing monsters. Guanshan was amused by his own humor. But this time, the Riddler plot prologue provided by the simulator, after killing this monster, I kind of understand. PS1. Update first, then change later. PS2. Thank you for died Orange Feiyu's reward. Tickets and rewards, Majimoto Duo. Chapter 48. In this plot, I'm probably playing the role of a ghost wandering around the border of hell. I want to find the entrance to hell, but can't. Because there was no danger for the time being, Guanshan pulled up the prompt interface at the beginning of the simulator and fell into deep thought as he looked at the words that he did not understand. According to Buddhism, the period between death and reincarnation was called the Bardo body. There were a total of 49 days during this period, and there was a chance to be released from reincarnation every 7 days. If one did not enter reincarnation after 49 days, they would become what was commonly known as a ghost and would never be able to reincarnate. And this ghost was obviously lost. He was King lost 3 times, which was why there were 3 road crossings. Although it doesn't seem to make sense, what else can these 3 road crossings lead to? I don't need to think with my toes to know that it has to be a monster. Guanshan used his super thinking to jump out of the plot framework and immediately understood the meaning of this paragraph. Especially the monster just now, the ability to lock weapons vaguely corresponds to the taking off clothes mentioned in the plot. It's probably the same principle as the getting rid of your weapon in Harry Potter. Guanshan's thoughts diverged. So, the letting go of memories and abandoning the body at the back should also be some kind of hint for the monster's ability. In other words, there are 2 more elite monsters at the back. If I continue to go higher, I'll meet the boss. He frowned. But what kind of ability could these 2 hints be? Letting go of memories. Is it an interference to the mind? Abandoning the body, based on this idea, could it be the opposite and lock my close combat ability? Guanshan pondered and nodded. It should be in this direction. He just needed to be mentally prepared and deal with it carefully. Okay, I've rested enough, and my HP is full. Guanshan looked at his HP bar and felt very relieved. He had already wrapped the healing charm around his wrist. This special cloth was drawn with dense, indecipherable runes with dark red paint, and it looked a little scary. But for Guanshan, this was a mysterious and exotic artistic expression. No matter how you look at it, it's adorable. Guanshan rolled up his sleeves to cover the cloth. He looked at the monsters that were still wriggling around and took out his Glock 17. He smiled and said, "Since you're not running, then don't run." Regardless of whether it was for the sake of gaining EXP or passively increasing his strength, clearing out small monsters was an indispensable part of the process. This was also the happiest part of the simulation other than touching the corpses. While Guanshan was searching the corpse, the worker bees that had rushed over after hearing the commotion had all run away. Even though they had done a lot of evil in the past, they had never seen such a cruel and terrifying scene. Almost in an instant, Worker Bee 3, a powerful C-class ability user in their eyes, had his arm torn off by the young man who had suddenly appeared. Immediately after, the man snatched the sharp sword from Worker Bee 3's hand. With an incomparably terrifying expression, he turned the dying Worker Bee into a beehive. What kind of overwhelming power was this? What kind of tyrannical personality was this to be able to do such a tragic thing? At this moment, everyone who had witnessed this scene could not think about these questions. There was only one thought left in their minds: run. There were differences among the worker bees and the killer bees. The top 10 worker bees were the leaders. As workers of lower ranks, they had to listen to them and serve them. For example, just now, Duan Ning had issued the order to surround the strange man who had suddenly appeared. But now, they had almost lost the courage to run, let alone fight this man. No, he was not human at all. He was a demon. The remaining worker bees were already paralyzed with fear. They desperately wanted to get up and run, but their bodies would not listen to them. Their legs were trembling, and they could only keep shouting, hoping that someone would come and save them. However, the killer bees only took in criminals. They had always been selfish, so who would come and save them? What was even more frightening was that after resting for a while, the man actually took out a pistol and walked toward them with a happy smile. Bang! Worker Bee 21 watched helplessly as his closest comrade was accurately shot in the head with a headshot. The instant explosion of fireworks mixed with unknown fragments was as dazzling as a shooting star in the dark night. Duan Ning, who had died with her eyes wide open on the ground, seemed to be watching everything with deep fear. The man's eyes were emotionless. With every step he took, he fired a shot. The swaying flashlight in his hand was like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. Whoever it shone on would have their life reaped in the next second. 1, 2, 3, death on the ground, death on the resistance, death on the escape. Worker Bee 21 trembled as he retreated into the corner. His legs finally regained some feeling in his frantic struggle. He quickly stood up. As he tried to escape, he sent a message through the walkie-talkie. There's an enemy attack on the southeast side of the factory. Worker Bee 3 is dead, requesting reinforcements. After he finished speaking, he turned around and was almost scared out of his wits. Guanshan had already noticed him because of the commotion. He raised his head and looked over. He shone his flashlight and exclaimed, "Oh, I missed one. Worker Bee 3 is dead?" It was Worker Bee 6 on the other end of the walkie-talkie. He was a little surprised. Wasn't that Gao Yi? Since when did Duan Ning lose to a little girl? She was even killed instead. How shameful. Worker Bee 6 crossed his legs in his office in the factory. He didn't care about Duan Ning's death at all. He had always disdained this woman, including Tao Luo, who had recently died. Although his ranking was low, he was confident that if both sides went all out, he would be the winner. He was just too lazy to do it. Duan Ning died because her skills were inferior. However, she was also an immortal relic. Her weapon was sealed, but she still died in the hands of the opponent. She was too weak. Worker Bee 6 revealed a mocking smile. A trembling denial came from the walkie-talkie. No, the person who came is not Gao Yi. It's a strange man. Wait, I remember. He is that. Guanshan. Bang. Before Worker Bee 21 finished speaking, a violent explosion came from the walkie-talkie. Guanshan? Worker Bee 6's smile froze on his face. Guanshan's voice was clearly heard from the walkie-talkie. He was surprised. My luck is good. There is an extra reward. Guanshan? Gao Yi had just broken through the encirclement of several worker bees. She climbed over a barbed wire fence and landed on the roof. At a glance, she saw Guanshan holding a gun. Gao Yi's pupils shrank. The man's whole body was soaked in blood. It dripped down the corner of his clothes and the gun in his hand to the ground. There were corpses all around. PS1. Thanks to Bob's little brother number 1 for the tip. PS2. The typhoon is so strong. The river in front of the door has risen by a third. It's scary.